Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐼𝐼𝐬 on WhatIf. Now let's start. Your POV: you are 4 years old at this point. While swinging on the school swings, you heard someone crying. Looking up, you saw a boy with dark green hair sitting on the ground near a tree. You got off the swings and ran to him to see if he was all right. You sat in front of him and asked if he was okay. He slowly looked up, revealing small scratches and burns on his face along with tears falling from his big green eyes. You gasped and quickly grabbed his hand, pulling him to his feet and walking him to the school nurse's office. After the nurse treated him and applied some bandages, you both went to grab your school bags because it was time to go home. As you and the green-haired boy waited for your parents to pick you up, you decided to introduce yourself and become friends. You told him your name, and he shyly introduced himself as Midoriya Izuku, thanking you for helping him. You smiled and held out your hand for him to shake, asking if he wanted to be friends. He gave you a small smile and shook your hand, agreeing. That was the day Izuku and you became friends. Time skip: you are 15 now. You called out to your best friend, urging him to slow down as he ran ahead of you. There was a villain at Tatooine Station, and Izuku was eager to see the pro heroes defeat him. A huge hero fan, he loved watching the pros fight villains so he could take notes in his notebook. He aspired to become a hero, but when he was 5, the doctors declared him quirkless, leaving him devastated. You remembered hearing him cry from your apartment next door until you moved to a house 3 minutes away. After you told him that you were also declared quirkless, you both made a promise to become the greatest heroes, with or without a quirk. To this day, you both kept that promise and worked hard to achieve it. Izuku playfully urged you to hurry, dragging you along. Once you arrived, you saw a huge villain atop the train station, causing chaos while a large crowd watched. Izuku pulled you to the front for a better view, and pro heroes began to arrive, prompting cheers from the crowd. You hoped All Might would show up, but remembered he only appeared when the villain was too tough for lower-ranked pros. You were also a fan of All Might, though not as fervently as Izuku. After 𝐼𝐼𝐬 arrived and defeated the villain, Izuku eagerly took notes on her quirk, mumbling excitedly. You giggled at his enthusiasm, finding it adorable. You had a crush on your best friend, having liked him since childhood when he saved you from a bully named 𝐾𝐮𝐬, whom Izuku called Kaken. They had been childhood friends until Bakugu got his quirk and changed. Time skip: Izuku and you walked through the entrance of 𝐼𝐼𝐬 Junior High, arriving just before the bell rang and taking your seats next to each other. Your teacher began discussing the importance of thinking seriously about your futures as third-year students. He mentioned career tests but dismissed the idea, smirking as he grabbed some papers. Everyone in the class began to show off their quirks, knowing what he was about to say. He exclaimed that everyone wanted to go into the hero track, and the room erupted in cheers. You sighed, glancing over at Izuku, who looked annoyed by the excitement. You shared his feelings. The teacher reminded everyone that no power usage was allowed in school, urging everyone to settle down. Then, Bakugu, with his overflowing ego, declared himself the best and belittled the others, claiming they would be lucky to be sidekicks. His arrogance frustrated you, and you wished you could confront him about it. A classmate, seemingly with a death wish, challenged Bakugu, and the tension in the room escalated. Bakugu responded with a smirk, and you felt your anger rising. The teacher noted Bakugu's impressive test results, suggesting he might get into you. High. The class buzzed with surprise at the prospect, and you glanced at Izuku, who looked shocked and defeated. You felt a similar sense of discouragement. Bakugu boasted about acing all the mock tests and declared himself the only one in the school with a chance at getting into you. Hi. He envisioned himself more popular than All Might, and you felt a surge of frustration, wishing you could silence him. When Bakugu turned his attention to you and Izuku, asking if you both wanted to go to you. 2. Your anger shifted to fear. In the corner of her eyes, 𝐿/N could see a frightened Izuku slowly looking up at Bakugu, who was frozen in shock. Yet she could feel the burning anger boiling inside him. This felt like the end for 𝐿/𝐿/N and Izuku Midoriya. Everyone in the class turned to them, and silence enveloped the room until laughter erupted. 𝐹/N's face flushed with embarrassment, while Izuku looked defeated and equally humiliated. Someone in the class remarked that there was no way they could become heroes without a quirk. Izuku, gathering his courage, stood up and explained that the rule had been changed, and they could be the first to prove themselves. But Bakugo, in a fit of rage, blasted his desk away, sending Izuku tumbling to the ground. Bakugo loomed over Izuku, who gazed up at him in fear. He shouted that they were worse than the other rejects, questioning why anyone would choose them over someone like him. 𝐹/N felt a surge of anger at Bakugo's words. She stood up and confronted him, demanding he not call her names. In response, Bakugo pushed her back, causing her to fall beside Izuku. Desperate to defend themselves, Izuku insisted they weren't trying to compete with Bakugo. They simply wanted to be heroes, despite lacking quirks. Bakugo's voice boomed as he declared they would never be among the best and would fail the entrance exams, while the others smirked at their misfortune. What had they gotten themselves into? Later that day, as school ended, 𝐹/N and Izuku packed their belongings. Izuku mentioned that their morning confrontation was all over the news. 𝐹/N remarked that it was just another day in the life of aspiring heroes. Izuku then decided to jot down some notes, but Bakugo snatched his notebook away, taunting him about their earlier conversation. 𝐹/N glared at Bakugo and his friends, asserting that they wouldn't be stopped from attending you. Hi. Bakugo snapped back, calling her names, while one of his friends mocked Izuku's notebook, which was titled, Hero Analysis for the Future Number 13. They laughed at the idea of him taking notes on how to be a hero. 𝐹/N demanded Bakugo return the notebook, but he only smirked and used his quirk to destroy it, tossing the remnants out the window. He boasted about wanting to be the only student from their junior high to make it to 𝐒, revealing his perfectionist nature. 𝐹/N felt small and inadequate, standing there trembling, feeling unworthy of being Izuku's best friend. Bakugo then placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, causing it to smoke, and warned him not to apply to 𝐒, before doing the same to 𝐹/N with that same insincere smile. After they left, 𝐹/N hung her head in disappointment. They walked out of school in silence, and she noticed Izuku's notebook floating in the school pond, surrounded by koi fish. She retrieved it and handed it back to him, whispering an apology. Izuku reassured her that it wasn't her fault, but 𝐹/N felt otherwise. She expressed her frustration at being unable to help him, tears streaming down her face as she questioned her worth as a best friend. Izuku stepped closer and embraced her, reminding her that they had made a promise to each other and would fulfill it together one day. In a flashback to when they were 4 years old, young Izuku excitedly called for 𝐹/N to join him for computer time, holding his All Might action figure. They were visiting Izuku's mom, and 𝐹/N wore an All Might cape as they rushed to watch a video of All Might's legendary battles. They watched with wide eyes, cheering for their hero, dreaming of becoming just like him once they got their quirks. That day was filled with joy, but a week later, 𝐹/N's mother delivered the heartbreaking news that the doctors had declared Izuku quirkless. Izuku's mom suggested that my mom take me to the hospital to check if I would have a quirk. When the doctors delivered the news to my mom and me moments later, I felt crushed. I was also quirkless. We were once again at Izuku's house. My mom and Izuku's mom were talking while Izuku and I sat together, watching All Might with tear-filled, somber expressions. Both moms stood at the bedroom door, their faces filled with worry and sadness. I hated it. Their pity felt suffocating. Izuku remarked that even in tough times, All Might always had a smile on his face. I echoed his sentiment, noting how he never gave up, even when things seemed impossible. As we turned to face our moms, tears welled in their eyes. We wondered aloud if we could become heroes too when we grew up. Afterward, our moms hugged us and expressed their apologies for us not having a quirk, but that wasn't what we wanted to hear. Later, we lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling with tired eyes. Izuku proposed that we make a promise. He wanted us to vow that, with or without a quirk, we would work hard to become strong heroes like All Might. He extended his pinky and I smiled, feeling a blush creep onto my cheeks. I agreed enthusiastically, and we locked pinkies, sealing our promise. And that's how our promise came to be. I looked up at Izuku and nodded, using my sleeves to wipe my face. He mentioned that we should head home since our moms were preparing dinner together. They were making my favorite food that night. I told him I would catch up after retrieving something I left in science class. He offered to wait, but I insisted he go ahead, assuring him I would see him soon. The school was quiet, and I felt a twinge of fear, but I brushed it aside. I made my way to the 3rd floor and entered my science class. I found my notebook under my desk, but then I heard the door shut behind me. I looked up to see a man with wild white hair and glasses, dressed in a lab coat and holding a cigar. I decided not to question his presence and attempted to leave. I apologized for returning but was met with resistance as he pushed me back. He smirked and used his quirk to restrain me before I could react. I stared at him, horrified, as he declared that I would be testing something for him. He laughed maniacally and pulled out a medium-sized syringe filled with a red substance that shimmered with hints of gold. Panic surged through me as he injected me, and I screamed, feeling dizzy and strangely empowered. As my vision blurred, I saw black dots before everything faded to darkness, his laughter echoing in my ears. I slowly opened my eyes to find fire surrounding the room, yet it didn't come near me. I sat up to see the man in the lab coat lying lifeless in front of me. Confusion washed over me. What had happened? Did I do this? I glanced down at the shattered syringe on the floor. Izuku's voice called out my name, filled with urgency. I couldn't remember anything after the injection. My vision began to blur again, and I felt myself sinking to the floor, my body growing numb. Hot tears streamed down my face as I fought to stay conscious, staring at the ceiling, desperate to avoid the encroaching darkness. What had happened to me? As Izuku walked away, leaving me to retrieve my belongings, he reflected on the doubts shared by our classmates. He questioned how we could become heroes without quirks, but he held on to hope that one day we would fulfill our promise. While walking through a tunnel, he heard strange noises behind him. Turning around, he was confronted by a towering green gooey villain. Fear gripped him, rendering him unable to move or speak. The villain spoke menacingly, claiming I would make a perfect skin suit. In a panic, Izuku screamed and attempted to flee, but the villain caught him, trying to invade his body. The villain reassured him that resisting would only make it worse, but Izuku fought back, desperate to escape. He felt his breath quicken, realizing he was in grave danger. 𝐼/N. I'm sorry. As Izuku struggled to breathe, a sewer cap flew out of nowhere and struck the villain. The villain looked back in fear, only to be greeted by the number 1 hero, All Might. He assured Izuku that he was safe, though Izuku had fainted long ago. With his signature smile, All Might declared that now that he was here, everything would be all right. The villain attempted to attack but missed All Might by a hair's breadth. All Might launched himself at the villain, delivering a powerful punch that sent the villain flying and freed Izuku. Izuku felt someone slapping his cheeks repeatedly, urging him to wake up. Annoyed by the slapping, he opened his eyes to see All Might standing right above him. Overwhelmed, he couldn't believe it. All Might expressed his relief at seeing Izuku awake, and Izuku, in shock, backed away a few feet. All Might noted that Izuku seemed to be moving all right, and Izuku continued to shake, still in disbelief that All Might was right in front of him. All Might apologized for the earlier chaos, explaining that he usually pays close attention to bystanders' safety. He chuckled about the difficulties of navigating the city sewer system. As the world spun around him, Izuku realized he wasn't dead after all. All Might thanked him for his help in capturing the villain, showing him 2 bottles containing the green, slimy substance from before. Excited, Izuku frantically searched for a pen to get an autograph, only to find that All Might had already signed his notebook. He thought about how he couldn't wait to show 𝐼/N and expressed his gratitude, bowing repeatedly and declaring that the autograph would be a family treasure. All Might mentioned he needed to take the villain to the police and advised Izuku to stay out of trouble. As he prepared to jump away, Izuku felt a pang of sadness at the thought of All Might leaving. He realized he might never see him again. All Might explained that pro heroes were always racing against time and enemies. Just as he was about to take off, Izuku grabbed his waist in a moment of panic. All Might looked down at him, surprised and a bit flustered, urging Izuku to let go. He insisted that while he loved his fans, this was too much. Izuku, terrified of falling, held on tightly. All Might, realizing the situation, told him to hold on as they took off into the sky. When they landed on a nearby building, Izuku seized the opportunity to ask All Might an important question. He wanted to know if it was possible to become a hero without a quirk. All Might paused, glancing at Izuku from the corner of his eye. Izuku shared his feelings of inadequacy, explaining how he and his best friend were often ridiculed for lacking powers. He expressed his longing to prove everyone wrong and to become heroes like All Might, inspiring others with their fearless smiles. However, as Izuku spoke, he noticed a change in All Might. The hero appeared to shrink before his eyes, transforming into a scrawny old man. Confused and shocked, Izuku questioned what had happened. The man assured him that he was indeed All Might but was interrupted as blood trickled from his mouth. Concerned, Izuku listened as All Might explained the truth behind his transformation, revealing the injuries he had sustained in a past battle. Izuku felt a wave of sympathy wash over him. He had no idea of the struggles All Might faced. The hero shared that he could only perform hero work for a limited time each day due to his condition. Izuku regretted asking about his secret, realizing it was something All Might had wanted to keep hidden. When he mentioned the villain Toxic Chainsaw, All Might acknowledged his knowledge but insisted that he had not been defeated by such a foe. He expressed his commitment to saving people with a smile, affirming that the symbol of peace would not be daunted by evil. He smiled to convey the pressure that heroes face, attempting to mask the fear within. He looked directly at me as I gasped. Heroes constantly risk their lives, and some villains are simply unbeatable without powers. He honestly believed that neither I nor my friend could become heroes without a quirk. His words shattered my heart and dreams into tiny pieces. I looked down, tears beginning to well in my eyes. I understood. If we wanted to help people, there were many other ways to do so. We could become police officers. They often faced ridicule for dealing with villains, but it was still a noble occupation. All Might said this as he walked away, leaving me alone on the rooftop. Before he left, he added that dreaming wasn't bad, but I also needed to consider what was realistic. That was it. I didn't want to break the promise 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬 and I made, but now that promise felt cracked due to All Might's words. As I stood there, an explosion caught my attention, prompting me to look up. A villain. I wondered which hero would respond. I began to run toward the door, but All Might's words echoed in my mind, halting my steps. The weight of his message weighed heavily on me, and I knew it would haunt me for a long time. I dreaded telling 𝐒𝐮 about it. I hated seeing her hurt. Time skipped Tetuan shopping district as I wandered, reviewing my notebook. Another explosion erupted to my right. Confused, I jogged over, only to find the goo monster rampaging. What? I thought All Might had captured him. How could this happen? When he jumped and I grabbed him, I must have made him drop something from his pocket. This was my fault. I overheard someone mention that a kid had been captured by the goo villain. My thoughts turned to how that kid was holding up. I had nearly suffocated within seconds of being trapped by that creature. As I covered my mouth and focused on the scene, my body moved on its own. 𝐾𝐿 was the kid inside, and even though I knew he despised me, I had to save him. But how? As I ran closer, I heard the heroes yelling for me to stop, but I didn't listen. I just kept running, unable to halt my momentum. The goo villain threatened me, declaring I was toast as he prepared to strike. In a moment of desperation, I tossed my backpack at him while continuing my charge toward 𝐾𝐿. I called out his name as I began to scratch at the goo, trying to free him. He yelled in confusion, questioning my presence. I didn't know why I was doing this. Perhaps it was the look of fear on his face. I insisted that I couldn't just stand by and watch him perish, even if he hated me. Tears streamed down my face as I continued my efforts. Just as the goo villain was about to strike, All Might arrived. He expressed his own sense of inadequacy, and I watched in shock. Even though he had admonished me, he admitted he hadn't practiced what he preached. He punched the goo away and took Kakin by the arm, blood trickling from his mouth as he declared that pros always risk their lives. I stared at him in awe as the goo villain cursed him. All Might unleashed a powerful strike, creating a whirlwind that swept the area clean of the villain. Silence fell as rain began to pour. All Might had changed the weather. I was about to speak when another explosion echoed nearby, and I turned to see it coming from 𝐼𝐼𝐷 Junior High. My heart raced as I sprinted toward it, calling out F/N's name. I pleaded silently for her safety as I quickened my pace. Your POV. I opened my eyes to a white ceiling. Looking down, I saw a green-haired boy sleeping on my lap. A small smile formed on my lips as I gently stroked his soft hair. He stirred, waking up, and when he saw me, he jumped up, tears streaming down his face as he hugged me tightly. He expressed his relief that I was okay, admitting he had been terrified I wouldn't wake up. He urged me not to scare him like that again, and soon tears filled my own eyes. After our emotional moment, he informed me that I had been asleep for a week. He recounted the events leading up to his finding me, and I regretted not being with him. He had met All Might and even received his autograph. Then he revealed his secret, leaving me in shock. He asked me to keep it to myself, and I promised I would. I inquired about what happened after he brought me to the hospital. He began to recount the story, explaining that after Kakin had insisted he didn't need saving and ran off, All Might had appeared moments later. Izuku's flashback. In Izuku's POV, after All Might transformed into his weaker form, he began to cough. He addressed me, thanking me, which took me by surprise. He also mentioned our earlier conversation, which piqued my interest. If I hadn't shared my life story, if I hadn't intervened in that fight, if I hadn't saved my best friend from that burning school, I would have been just another bystander. He expressed his gratitude, bowing slightly. I protested, insisting it was my fault the goo villain had been there in the first place. I had interfered with his efforts, wasting his energy and time. But All Might interrupted me, stating he wasn't finished. He acknowledged that I had claimed not to have a quirk, and when he saw a timid boy trying to save lives, it inspired him to act as well. I looked up at him in shock, realizing that every hero has a story about how they became great, and most share a common thread. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think, almost on their own. Tears began to well up in their eyes as memories of their mother's words echoed in their minds. They recalled the sorrowful apologies, wishing for a different outcome, words that neither of them wanted to hear. All Might spoke, acknowledging the young man's pain, and as the tears flowed more freely, he fell to his knees. He had longed to hear different words from his mother, words that would have given him hope. But then All Might offered a glimmer of light, saying that both he and his friend could become heroes. In that moment, the crack in the promise he and his friend had made began to heal. The day had been terrifying, yet it transformed into something appealing, and he held no regrets. Dreams could indeed become reality. All Might proclaimed that he deemed the young man worthy of his power, stating that his quirk was now his to inherit. Suddenly, the scene shifted back to the present. The young man was in shock, unable to believe what he had just heard. Did All Might really say he was going to give Izuku his quirk? All Might playfully urged him to let him finish, and the young man wished he had some popcorn for the unfolding drama. As Izuku processed the weight of All Might's words, he felt frozen. He looked up in disbelief, questioning what he meant by inherit. All Might laughed, but then his expression turned serious. He assured Izuku that he wouldn't force anything upon him and explained that this was a choice he had to make. All Might shared that his abilities were often misunderstood, labeled as superhuman strength and a boost. He revealed that his quirk was not something he was born with but rather a power passed down like a sacred torch. This revelation shocked Izuku even more than before. The idea that someone had given All Might his quirk was astounding, and the prospect of receiving such a gift was overwhelming. All Might encouraged him, insisting that he could give Izuku his abilities. Izuku struggled to process the enormity of it all, muttering about the impossibility of passing down a quirk. All Might interrupted his thoughts, telling him to stop overthinking. He revealed that the power to transfer abilities was the essence of his quirk, which he called one for all. Izuku listened in awe as All Might explained how the power grew stronger with each successor, a crystallization of courage and hope. Izuku questioned why All Might would choose him for such a gift, fearing he might not live up to it. All Might explained that he had been searching for a worthy successor and had witnessed Izuku's bravery when he jumped into action to save others. All Might smiled, recognizing Izuku's heroic spirit, which brought tears to his eyes once more. All Might playfully urged him to stop crying if he wanted to inherit his quirk. The encouragement and the secrets behind All Might's powers filled Izuku with a sense of purpose. This was the moment he had been waiting for, and he could not turn it down. With newfound determination, he agreed to accept the offer, wiping away his tears and standing tall with a smile. All Might responded with enthusiasm, affirming that he had expected such a reply before the scene shifted back to the present. The young man was left in awe, tears streaming down his face as he reflected on the incredible experience. It felt like something out of a movie or anime. He learned that All Might had given him his phone number and that training would begin as soon as he recovered. He was surprised but grateful as his friend explained that doctors had found something unusual in his BLD, prompting further examination. All Might had sensed a strong power radiating from him, leading to this moment. As the realization settled in, it felt as if a meteor had crashed down upon him, bringing with it the weight of destiny. All Might wanted to talk to me, and I could hardly believe it. As I felt sweat trickle down my face, he appeared in the room in his strong form. It was surreal to see him here, and I thought I might faint from the excitement. He greeted us with his trademark smile, and I struggled to comprehend the situation. I wondered if I was dreaming as I began to feel lightheaded. All Might assured me that I was not dreaming and explained that he had come to discuss what happened last week. I recalled the events with Izuku by my side, who seemed surprisingly calm. I explained how I had gone back to school to retrieve my science notebook and encountered a strange man at the entrance of the lab. All Might asked if it was the white-haired man who had been found on the ground, and I nodded in response. After the man entered, he locked the door and prevented me from leaving. I described how he used his quirk to restrain me and pulled out a syringe filled with a mysterious red and gold substance. After he injected me, I lost consciousness. When I came to, I found myself surrounded by fire that did not harm me, with Izuku calling my name before I blacked out again. All Might informed me that the special police had found a video of the incident in the classroom. They would show it to me soon, but it would take a few minutes. He mentioned that the doctors had taken my BLD to investigate the source of the immense power within me. Despite being quirkless, I now exhibited extraordinary abilities, and scientists were involved in unraveling this mystery. Moments later, the doctor entered with my BLD DNA results. He greeted us and introduced himself as Dr. Hatsuki. He handed me the results, which I accepted with trembling hands. That day marked the moment I discovered I was no longer quirkless. All Might promised to help train both me and Izuku, filling me with a mix of excitement and apprehension. 2 days later, I reflected on the events that had unfolded. I had learned that my quirk originated from the man who injected me. The special police had shown me a video of my confrontation with him, revealing how I broke free from my restraints and fought back with incredible powers. The footage displayed flames and lightning as I battled, ultimately defeating the man and causing chaos in the classroom. All Might was astonished by the video, claiming he had never witnessed anything like it before. Izuku stared at me in disbelief, while I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. The fight had been intense, and though I emerged victorious, it left me feeling pale and shaken. Today, I was being released from the hospital, but All Might and the special police were keeping a close watch on me. He had assured the police that he would train me and help me enroll in 𝐒𝐮𝐬 for better classes and training. While I was excited about the opportunity, I was also filled with anxiety. What if I couldn't control my powers? What if I accidentally hurt someone? The thought was terrifying. Early the next morning at Dagobah Municipal Beach Park, All Might lay on 2 separate giant fridges that Izuku and I were trying to push. We hadn't moved them an inch, and I felt frustrated. All Might had placed a silver bracelet on me that suppressed my quirk until I built up some muscle. Izuku was in the same situation, unable to access his quirk until he gained strength. After another failed attempt to move the fridges, we fell to the ground. All Might laughed, reminding us that people moved these fridges every day without super strength. I pointed out that his weight was a significant factor, and he jokingly claimed to have lost some weight, though he still weighed over 500 pounds. I questioned why we were dragging trash at the beach park, which looked more like a dump. All Might's laughter echoed as he declared that we were unworthy of his power. His words stung, but I knew this was part of our training. Even if he was right, she was trying her best. If she didn't try, then All Might had permission to take away her powers with a potion that the doctors and scientists had made the day before. The potion would 𝗟𝗘 her of all her powers, or as they put it would eliminate them entirely. They explained that the amount of power she had in her body could be dangerous, which was why they wanted her to continue training with All Might and recommended her to you, the greatest superhero school of all time. They had shared all this during her second checkup to see if anything new had developed. They also mentioned that she might not even be able to use all the quirks within her, which left her feeling a bit disappointed. Izuku looked down in shame, tears welling in his eyes, expressing his disbelief at the situation. All Might, while walking toward them and still taking pictures of Izuku, commented on their physical limitations. He explained that his quirk, One for All, was a lot to handle. The combined physical abilities of everyone who had ever used it created a force akin to a hurricane. An unprepared body could not fully inherit it, and if they tried, they could seriously injure themselves. He then turned his attention to her, warning that her quirk was unique and could be just as dangerous. If she pushed her limits without proper training, it could harm her. That was why he was training both her and Izuku in this rigorous manner. He had the authority to take away her powers, and he could easily do the same with Izuku's. Therefore, they both needed to try harder because he believed they would become amazing heroes one day. Hearing that made her feel somewhat reassured, even though the earlier warnings had made her stomach churn. She could tell Izuku was also feeling uneasy. Izuku looked around the beach, trying to make sense of their situation. He realized that this intense training was akin to a hardcore workout, and All Might was their trainer. All Might confirmed this but added that there was another reason for their training. He had done some online research after their meeting with the scientists and discovered that part of the beach park's coast had been neglected for many years. He explained that due to ocean currents, anything dropped in the water ended up on this beach, and people had taken advantage of that by illegally dumping their trash. As a result, locals avoided the area. Izuku stood up, and she followed suit, brushing the sand off herself. All Might lamented that heroes these days were focused on flashy displays and capturing villains, whereas true heroism was about volunteer service, even if it was deemed boring. As he crushed a nearby object, it exploded, sending a gust of wind swirling around them. He declared that they would restore the coastline, marking the first step on their paths to becoming heroes. She understood that this would be a challenging task, but she was determined to support Izuku as best as she could. Izuku expressed disbelief at the enormity of the task ahead of them, and she nodded in agreement. All Might asked if they both wanted to attend you. She admitted she didn't have much choice but still wanted to go, and Izuku agreed. He mentioned that since All Might had attended, it must be the best school. They were ready to aim high, even if it seemed like a long shot. All Might reminded them that being a hero required a quirk, or in her case, the ability to control her quirk, especially one that could be dangerous. They all gazed out at the shining ocean and the sunset, acknowledging the challenges ahead. Izuku cut in, realizing they needed to prepare their bodies quickly for the upcoming exams, which were only 10 months away. All Might reassured them that he would support them with a training plan he had devised. He presented a series of papers detailing their training regimen, which he had clearly put a lot of effort into. Although Izuku was visibly nervous about the rigorous schedule, she felt a sense of determination growing within her. All Might asked if they were up for the challenge, and without hesitation, they both nodded. Despite Izuku's nervousness, his determined expression shone through. They were ready to work harder than anyone else to achieve their dreams. So what choice did they have? They had promised to become the greatest heroes of all time. He reflected on that promise with a smile, recalling the moment it was made. All Might nodded, looking very proud of their determination. Just like that, they both embarked on 10 months of intense training. Time skipped 7 months later. 7 months had passed, and sleep and rest had become scarce. However, it was all worth it as they had grown stronger than ever. Izuku had taken to talking to himself in class frequently, and they both appeared exhausted, drawing curious glances from their classmates. It was frustrating, but neither he nor Izuku let it affect them. Today, he and Izuku were running while carrying heavy objects on their shoulders. All Might was in front of them in his weaker form, riding one of those black self-balancing scooters. I stopped when I heard a thud next to me. I looked over to see Izuku on the ground, so I let go of my heavy object and ran to him. I placed a hand on his shoulder and asked if he was okay, but he didn't respond. All I could hear was his heavy breathing. All Might urged him to look alive, reminding him that he only had 3 months left. He questioned whether Izuku was really going to give up after all the hard work he had put in. I felt bad for him, but All Might was right. We couldn't give up, not after all the effort we had invested over these months. I felt Izuku gently push my hand away as he tried to get up, but it was clear he was sore and tired. Honestly, I was feeling the same way. All Might pointed out that the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸 American Dream Plan was designed with our bodies in mind to ensure we would both be ready for the entrance exam. He looked at us with disappointment, noting that we hadn't been sticking to the plan. I realized I had only been following part of it, while Izuku had neglected most of it. All Might warned us that overdoing it would have the opposite effect. He asked if we really wanted to get in, and I looked down in shame. Izuku weakly admitted that he had to work harder or he wouldn't stand a chance against the other applicants. I understood his feelings completely. He expressed his longing not just to get into 𝐒𝐮𝐬, but to excel and become like All Might. As he tried to rise again, he declared that he didn't want to break the promise he had made and that he would keep trying until he had what it took to become the greatest hero in the world. Tears filled his eyes again. I echoed his determination, looking up at All Might, who wore a shocked yet proud expression. Transforming into his strong form, he lifted both Izuku and me by the backs of our shirts, praising our fighting spirit. He assured us that now was not the time to rush progress and declared that he would help us get back on track, adjusting our plan as needed. I smiled at him, feeling my eyelids grow heavy. I told him he wasn't an old man, and he laughed. That was the last thing I heard before sleep took over. 3 months later, on the morning of the exams, I was pumped. Izuku and I woke up extra early and finished cleaning the remaining trash. We celebrated our victory, shouting with joy at having completed our training. I glanced toward the parking lot and saw All Might in his weaker form, standing in shock at the beach before turning to us with an extremely proud expression. All Might exclaimed in amazement that we had even cleaned outside the area he had designated. He was genuinely impressed, noting that there wasn't a speck of trash left on the beach. I had suggested cleaning the outside area, and I was glad we did. He acknowledged that we had only a few minutes to spare but that we had exceeded his expectations. As he transformed into his strong form in an instant, I jumped down from my spot, nearly falling, but All Might caught me. I looked over at Izuku, who had also fallen, but All Might caught him too. He praised our excellent work, saying he felt like a proud father. Izuku's voice cracked as he mentioned we had finished everything, and I echoed his sentiment, feeling happy about our accomplishments. I asked All Might if he thought we were ready now, hoping for a positive response. He confirmed that we had done well and expressed his astonishment at our progress. I felt a sense of pride as I supported Izuku, who was also sweating profusely. All Might showed us a picture of us from 10 months ago, looking exhausted and defeated. He pointed out how we had transformed since then, now possessing strength and determination. All Might reminded us that there was still a long road ahead before either of us could inherit his full power, but he expressed how proud he was of us and that we were both worthy of becoming heroes. I noticed Izuku looking down, a weak smile on his face, as he questioned whether he truly deserved this recognition. All Might, slightly confused, reassured him that it was our hard work that had brought us to this moment, not his efforts. With a booming laugh, All Might announced it was time for the award ceremony. He called Izuku forward, and I stepped back to let him stand in front of All Might. All Might took a strand of his golden hair and imparted wisdom about the difference between luck and recognition. He emphasized that the power Izuku was about to receive was earned through his own effort. Izuku nodded in understanding, and my smile widened as I felt a sense of pride for both of us. Let me tell you that his body right now is truly impressive. All Might held a golden strand of hair in front of Izuku's face and exclaimed that he should eat it. The expression on Izuku's face made me laugh, but I wondered if All Might was serious. Did Izuku really have to consume that hair to gain his powers, or was All Might just teasing him? Izuku, clearly confused, asked for clarification. All Might explained that it didn't matter what it was, as long as Izuku took in his DNA. Izuku's reaction was one of disbelief, and his frustration made me laugh even harder. He grabbed my shoulder, shaking me in an attempt to stop my laughter, but it only made me laugh more. All Might urged Izuku to hurry, reminding him that he would be late for the exam. With a swift motion, he encouraged Izuku to eat the hair. A few minutes later, he turned to me and, instead of offering me a hair strand, removed my bracelet. An immense power surged through me, a strange yet exhilarating sensation. Izuku, with a gentle smile, asked how I felt. I replied that I felt amazing, albeit a bit strange, and returned his smile. All Might cautioned me to be careful while using my powers, emphasizing that I couldn't push my limits until I received more training at you. He expressed his concern for both Izuku and me, stating that we had become like his children over the past 10 months, and he didn't want to lose either of us. His words brought tears to my eyes, and I hugged him tightly, whispering a soft thank you. That marked the end of our 10 months of training with All Might. Now it was time for Izuku and me to pass the exam and secure our places at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. On the day of the 𝐒𝐮𝐬 high school entrance exam, Izuku and I hurried to get ready. After a quick shower, I put on my uniform and tied my hair up since it was quite warm outside. Standing in front of 𝐒𝐮𝐬, I felt a mix of excitement and disbelief as students passed by, some stopping to admire the school. I couldn't believe we were finally here, and Izuku echoed my thoughts as we walked in together. I noticed he had a worried expression and asked if he was okay. He admitted he hadn't had a chance to test his new power yet, which made him anxious. I reassured him that everything would be fine, and he seemed to relax a bit. Izuku mentioned that even after swallowing the hair, he didn't feel any significant changes. Just then, Bakugo appeared behind us, his usual angry demeanor on full display. He warned us to get out of his way, causing Izuku to panic. I couldn't help but express my frustration at Bakugo's attitude. As we continued on, Izuku pointed out that my hand was engulfed in red fire. I was startled and waved my hand around, drawing curious looks from others. Izuku urged me to relax, and I soon realized the fire wasn't hurting me. Could this be one of my quirks? As I pondered this, the flames extinguished. After that strange moment, we resumed walking, but Izuku suddenly tripped and began to float. A girl with short brown hair and big brown eyes had used her quirk to stop him. She giggled and apologized for catching him without asking first, her sweet voice making me feel uneasy. I noticed Izuku staring at her, his cheeks flushed, and I felt a wave of annoyance. I approached Izuku, catching the girl's attention. She asked if I was his friend, and I nodded, feeling a bit withdrawn. She remarked on how nerve-wracking the situation was before saying goodbye and walking away. Izuku, in disbelief, exclaimed that he had just talked to a girl. I pointed out that he hadn't really conversed with her, which made him blush. He explained that it was easier to talk to me since we had known each other since childhood, but he found the girl intimidating because she was pretty. I teased him about whether that meant I wasn't pretty, and his surprised expression quickly turned into a smirk. He playfully asked if I was jealous, and I denied it, feeling flustered. Just forget what was said, she thought while walking away, her cheeks flushed. She hoped he wouldn't bring it up later. Time skip 𝐒𝐮𝐬 high school hero course exam orientation. Izuku and she sat listening to the voice hero known as Present Mic. Izuku was fanboying next to her while Bakugo sat beside him, telling him to be quiet but still watching Present Mic with an oddly calm expression. Present Mic announced that the listeners would be conducting 10-minute mock urban battles after the orientation. She wondered what the battles would be like, hoping they wouldn't be too difficult. But then again, this was an exam at a superhero school, so it was bound to be challenging. You can bring whatever you want with you. After the presentation, you'll head to your specified battle centers. Present Mic continued, and she glanced at her exam ticket. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲 noted that they were being split up, preventing them from working with friends. Yeah, you're right. Even though our examinee numbers are consecutive, we're assigned to different battle centers, Izuku replied, looking at 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲's ticket. 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲, reverting to his usual demeanor, insisted that he had been looking forward to facing them both, especially Izuku. Izuku flinched at 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲's words and then looked at her ticket. They were indeed separated. She was in Battle Center C, Izuku in Battle Center B, and 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲 in Battle Center A. She felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. She had hoped to work with Izuku during the exams, but it seemed that wouldn't be possible. Present Mic excitedly informed everyone that 3 different types of foe villains were stationed in each battle center. She focused on the presentation as he displayed the villains they would have to face and the points each was worth. He also mentioned that they couldn't fight other examinees, which eased her worries about being attacked by other students. As she listened, she sighed. Apparently, there was a mistake on the paper they received, as one student pointed out. Present Mic clarified that the 4th villain wasn't worth any points and should be avoided at all costs. If they encountered this villain, they were to run away and get as far from it as possible. He assured them that there was only one of these 4th villains, so there was no need to panic. She thought to herself that this was somewhat like a video game, and Izuku nodded in agreement. Present Mic concluded with a motivational quote from Napoleon Bonaparte, inspiring her confidence. Some parts of the exam seemed manageable, but she knew others would be tough, so she needed to be prepared. With a final cheer of encouragement, Present Mic sent them off to change into their gym clothes. She donned a black sweater over a white shirt, paired with black leggings and red high-top sneakers. Once she finished changing and fixing her hair, she joined her group but paused when she heard Izuku call her name. He wished her good luck and urged her to be careful, concern etched on his face. She reassured him, promising not to push her limits, and gave him a quick hug and a kiss on the cheek before running off. She caught a glimpse of his flushed cheeks and the small smile on his lips. Time skip Battle Center C. This was it. Time to put her 10 months of training with all might to the test. She stood before 2 large, closed doors, knowing that beyond them lay the battle center where she and the others would fight. It resembled a city. As she waited for the doors to open, she observed her competitors closely. They all appeared confident, some even equipped with gear. They looked strong and impressive compared to her. Minutes later, Present Mic shouted from a pillar, signaling them to get ready. On your marks. Get set. Run. At his command, she sprinted forward as fast as she could. Villains surged toward them from various directions, and everyone quickly engaged them. She realized that if she didn't find a robot to defeat and earn points, she would be at a disadvantage. She removed the bracelet All Might had given her and tucked it into her pocket, feeling her power surge through her. Flashback to that morning at the beach. All Might had handed her the silver bracelet, instructing her to keep it. She had asked why, feeling confused. He explained that her power was new and potent, and if she exposed it, villains would sense it and come after her. He emphasized that neither he nor the special police could allow that to happen. So wear it when you are not battling or training. You are only allowed to take it off during battles and training. Understood, he said, and she nodded. A few people stopped battling and stared as she ran. She smirked at the surprised expressions on their faces, feeling the surge of power emanating from her. Suddenly, excitement coursed through her as she spotted robots to destroy. So far, she had accumulated 45 points, taking down villains here and there using her super strength quirk combined with her lightning quirk. As she ran and turned a corner, she halted at the sight before her. A gigantic robot loomed ahead, presumably villain number 4. It was wreaking havoc, causing debris to fall from damaged buildings and smoke to billow into the air. Now she understood why it was worth 0 points. It could easily overpower anyone without real training. Just as she contemplated fleeing, a scream pierced the chaos. She focused to see a girl trapped beneath rubble, and her heart raced as she noticed the villain advancing toward her. While others fled, she debated whether to save the girl and how to do it. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. The only way to rescue her was to defeat the villain. As the girl screamed again, she made up her mind. She ran as fast as she could, recalling a quirk that could destroy the robot. Then it struck her, she could use one for all. If she possessed every quirk in the world, she was certain she had All Might's quirk. Picking up speed, she felt a surge of energy in her legs that propelled her high into the air. Remembering All Might's advice about shouting that one word, she clenched her fist, which glowed gold with red lightning, and punched the giant robot while yelling, 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐻𝐬. The robot shattered into countless pieces, crashing to the ground and sending debris flying. All Might had told her and Izuku that there was no merit in taking down that giant robot, but there was an opportunity, a chance to shine and demonstrate their true abilities. She sensed the gazes of everyone below her, but she didn't care. This was her moment to shine, and they had all witnessed her power. As she descended rapidly, she noticed that the hand she used to strike the robot was broken, along with one of her legs. How was she not feeling pain? As she fell, she inhaled deeply and unleashed a gust of air toward the ground, creating a massive tornado beneath her that slowed her descent and sent those nearby tumbling away. Oops! Upon landing, she collapsed to the ground, and that was when the pain hit her. It was so intense that her vision blurred, and she could barely hear anything. She saw figures moving around, realizing they were other participants in the exams, but their words were muffled. As she slowly lost consciousness, she wondered if All Might had seen her feat. She also thought about Izuku, whether he was okay and if he had passed. With that final thought, she blacked out. It had been a week since the exams. She was at Izuku's house, having dinner with his mother and Izuku himself, who had been staring and smiling at a cooked fish since they started. She called out to him, but he didn't respond. Concerned, she urged him to snap out of it, noticing that his mother looked equally worried. Startled, Izuku finally looked up, an apologetic expression on his face, and asked if they had said something. After waking up in the hospital, she had seen Izuku in the bed next to hers, unconscious. When she asked the nurse what had happened, she learned that Izuku had experienced the same ordeal, but he had scored 0 points while she had earned feeling guilty. She requested the nurse to summon Present Mike, hoping to transfer some of her points to Izuku, but was told that it wasn't possible. Since that day, she felt a heavy weight in her heart. When Izuku awakened, he lacked his usual spark. He hadn't spoken to her or anyone else until now. His mother, noticing his fixation on the fish, asked if she should be concerned. Izuku apologized, explaining that he had just spaced out for a moment before resuming his meal. After dinner, Izuku sat on the couch, staring at the wall with a forlorn expression. She approached him, watching as he closed his eyes and sighed sadly while she sat beside him. His mother, standing behind them, acknowledged the anxiety of waiting for the results. Izuku replied that he guessed that was true. She reassured him, expressing her pride and admiration for him, trying to lift his spirits, but it didn't seem to help. Izuku merely muttered, "Sure," and fell silent. His mother decided to check the mail, putting on her slippers. Before she left, she got up, offering to join her. She walked away from Izuku, bidding him goodbye and promising to see him later. He didn't respond, just gazing at her before looking down again. As she and Mrs. Midoriya walked out to retrieve the mail, she mentioned that she would head home to check on her own. Mrs. Midoriya was about to say something but paused, her attention caught by a piece of mail that had arrived at their house. It was an exciting day when a letter from 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸 arrived. The protagonist watched as a friend rushed inside, calling out Izuku's name. Eager to check the mail, they ran home to find their mother staring at the letter with wide eyes. She exclaimed with joy that it was from 𝐒𝐮𝐦, and they both hurried inside to open it. As the letter was revealed, a metal object emerged, projecting the image of All Might. All Might announced that he would be a new faculty member at 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸, which filled the protagonist with a mix of surprise and happiness. He praised their performance during the exams, mentioning the rescue points earned for helping Izuku and another girl. The protagonist had accumulated a total of 65 rescue points and secured 45 battle points, placing them in 3rd overall. The realization that they had passed the exams and would attend their dream school brought tears of joy to both the protagonist and their mother. After the projection ended, they decided to celebrate with Izuku, who had also passed. Bursting into his house, they rushed to his room, passing by his astonished mother. Upon entering, they found Izuku with tears on his face. Overjoyed, the protagonist jumped into his arms, exclaiming their shared success. They embraced tightly, both overwhelmed with emotion. Later, the protagonist's mother visited Izuku's house to congratulate him. Mrs. Midoriya offered her own congratulations and a warm hug, sharing in the joy of their accomplishments. As April arrived, the protagonist prepared for their first day at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬. Just before leaving, their mother expressed her concern, urging them to be careful with their new powers. She had been anxious since learning about the potential dangers. The protagonist reassured her, promising that All Might and Izuku would be there to support them. With a final wave, they stepped out, ready to begin their high school journey. Together with Izuku, they navigated the bustling halls of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬 in search of their classroom. Upon finding Class 1A, they entered to a chorus of excited shouts. A boy with dark blue hair was arguing with Bakugo, and amidst the commotion, the protagonist learned the boy's name was 𝐼𝐻𝐬 𝐼𝐻𝐬. As they stood at the door, the class turned their attention to them, causing a wave of anxiety to wash over the protagonist. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 paused his argument, recognizing them, while Bakugo glared with irritation. Izuku greeted the class shyly, while the protagonist remained quiet, feeling the weight of their peers' stares. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 introduced himself, and the protagonist confidently interrupted, acknowledging him by name. They shook hands, determined not to let fear take over. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 expressed surprise at their performance during the exams, admitting he had misjudged them. Izuku awkwardly laughed, trying to downplay his achievements. Suddenly, a voice interrupted from behind, belonging to a man with long black hair emerging from a yellow sleeping bag. He instructed the class to focus, revealing himself as their homeroom teacher, 𝐼𝐻𝐬. His demeanor was serious, and he wasted no time in informing them they would be participating in a Quirk assessment test. As the class processed this information, the protagonist felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, knowing this was just the beginning of their journey at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬. Apparently, they were skipping the orientation and getting right into the action because Izawa believed orientation was a waste of time for aspiring heroes. He explained that what we were about to do was similar to a physical exam, but now we could use our quirks, and those who finished last would face expulsion. This sudden revelation made me anxious, especially for Izuku, and because I still struggled to control my powers. I glanced over at Izuku, who wore a terrified expression. I whispered to him, hoping to ease his nerves, assuring him that he would do fine. He looked down, expressing his uncertainty. The test began with a 50-meter dash. The first two competitors were Ida and a girl named 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬. Following them were Uraraka and a boy with a tail. After everyone had their turn, it was my moment alongside a guy with half white and half red hair. Ida had set the best time so far at 3 seconds. My competitive spirit ignited, and as the countdown from the little robot began, I felt a surge of power coursing through my legs. When it shouted, "Go!" my legs moved as if they had a mind of their own, and in the blink of an eye, I crossed the finish line. The robot announced my time, 1 seconds. The reaction from everyone was immediate and loud, filled with shock. What just happened? The robot then declared, 3 seconds. Snapping me out of my confusion. I turned to see the half-white, half-red-haired boy had finished. Izawa's expression briefly reflected surprise before returning to normal. Izuku, with sparkling eyes, praised my performance, and I giggled, still trying to comprehend how it all unfolded. Next was the grip strength test. I gripped the metal apparatus and registered 150 kilograms. Not bad, I thought. I turned to Izuku and asked about his score. He replied, disappointed, that he had only managed 56 kilograms. A guy with black hair commented on a muscular six-armed student, jokingly comparing him to a gorilla or an octopus. The following test was the standing long jump. Unsure of how I would perform, I watched as a boy named Yuga Aoyama went first. When it was my turn, I considered using a quirk related to flying. As I prepared to jump, I felt myself begin to float, but my excitement caused me to lose focus, and I stumbled, landing awkwardly. I looked down, realizing I had only made it a few inches before the end. Disappointed, I brushed off the sand and returned to my classmates, who wore expressions of confusion and shock, making me blush and look down. I hoped no one would ask questions, knowing exactly why they were puzzled. Perhaps I should have stuck to one quirk instead of trying different ones, but they would find out eventually. Moving on to the next test, we performed repeated side steps. I didn't exert much effort but still did well, utilizing my speed. The next challenge was ball throwing. I initially planned to use one for all but remembered that Izuku had that quirk. It felt wrong to use it, and I wasn't ready for that level of power. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐿 went first and achieved an unbelievable score, infinity. I thought about how I could use that quirk to match her score, but it felt like cheating, and I preferred to avoid drawing attention. When it was Izuku's turn, I sensed he would attempt to use one for all. However, as he threw the ball, it failed to activate. I glanced at Izuku and realized he was the reason. I recognized him now. Izuku was Eraserhead, the pro hero who could temporarily nullify others' quirks just by looking at them. Izuku pulled Izuku closer with his scarf and whispered something that none of us could hear. After releasing him and restoring his quirk, Izuku grabbed the ball and returned to the throwing circle, his eyes hidden beneath his hair. I wondered what Izuku had told him. Talking to himself, Izuku got into position again. He pulled back and threw the ball, this time using 5% of one for all on the tip of his finger, sending it soaring high into the air. I watched in awe as it reached an impressive height. The crowd erupted in cheers when the robot announced, 705. 3 meters. I smiled at Izuku, proud of how much he had grown in such a short time. He was on his way to becoming the hero he had always dreamed of being. Feeling a presence behind me, I noticed All Might watching from behind a building, a proud look on his face. Sometimes, he could easily be mistaken for Izuku's father. After a few more students took their turns, it was finally my turn again. I decided to use wind manipulation, hoping it would propel the ball to great heights. Taking a deep breath, I threw the ball as hard as I could, releasing a gust of air that created a mini whirlwind, sending the ball soaring even higher. When the ball landed, I looked over at Mr. Izuku, who wore an expression of shock that he didn't bother to hide this time. He revealed my score, 800. 3 meters, making my throw the second best in the class. A boy with blonde hair and a streak of black, visibly astonished, exclaimed about my use of speed, levitation, and air manipulation, questioning what my quirk truly was. I couldn't recall his name, but I knew he had the ability to generate electricity. My quirk. The student felt a wave of anxiety wash over her as the attention focused on her, wishing it would fade. Mr. Izuku acknowledged her with a nod, his gaze fixed on his phone. He looked up with a hint of amusement, revealing that her records indicated she possessed an infinite number of quirks. The class erupted in disbelief, except for Izuku, who stood to the side, already aware of the situation and watching as everyone reacted in shock. Yes, I have every quirk in the world, she admitted, her gaze dropping. The awe and disbelief from her classmates were palpable. But if I push myself too far, I could be in serious danger. So, I'm basically a ticking time bomb. She realized she might have shared too much. That's why you're here at 𝐼𝐼𝐼, and in my class, Mr. Izuku explained. Confusion crossed her face as she looked up at him. He continued, stating that 𝐼𝐼 could help her manage her powers, supervised by professionals, including All Might. He added that if she lost control, he could simply nullify her quirks and put her to rest, which widened her eyes in surprise. Okay, she managed to respond, feeling overwhelmed by the information and a bit intimidated by his last comment. As she glanced around the classroom, she noticed the other students, excluding Bakugo and Izuku, staring at her expectantly, eager for more details about her abilities. Taking a shaky breath, she assured them, I'll answer all of your questions later. Their kind smiles eased her tension, making her feel a little more at ease. Perhaps this wouldn't be so bad after all. Despite the challenges ahead, she resolved to focus on what she could do, alongside Izuku and her new classmates. After the unexpected test that Mr. Izuku administered, everyone gathered to find out their rankings. Mr. Izuku announced that he had ranked them from best to worst, suggesting they should already have an idea of their standings. He then displayed the scores on his hologram, and a wave of anxiety washed over the group as they wondered who would be in last place. It felt particularly unfair since it was their first day, and the last-ranked student would have to go home. As the hologram lit up, the protagonist discovered they were in second place, just below Momo Yaoyorozu, with Shoto Todoroki in third. However, their hearts sank when they saw who was last, Izuku Midoriya. Concerned, they glanced over at him, noticing his pale complexion. Feeling a surge of sympathy, the protagonist was about to approach Mr. Izuku to voice their discontent when he revealed that he had been joking. No one was actually going home. The revelation shocked everyone, and the protagonist felt a mix of relief and frustration at Mr. Izuku's deceptive tactics. A girl with black spiky hair awkwardly admitted that she should have clarified the situation earlier, prompting glares from the group, except for Izuku, who still looked shaken. Mr. Izuku concluded the session, instructing everyone to pick up a syllabus and read it before the next morning. As they left, the protagonist noticed Izuku sighing heavily. They walked beside him and offered a comforting pat on the back. Mr. Izuku then called out to Izuku, handing him a pass to the nurse and warning that the real training would be tougher tomorrow. He also mentioned that he would be keeping a close eye on the protagonist, hinting at their potential. Determined to support Izuku, the protagonist offered to accompany him to the nurse's office. They shared a light moment, joking about making it through the first day, albeit with some bumps. Izuku expressed his disappointment about his performance, feeling he had failed in many areas. The protagonist reassured him, explaining that starting at the bottom meant he had the opportunity to grow and impress everyone, including the pro heroes. Izuku's eyes widened with hope as he listened, and he smiled back, expressing gratitude for the protagonist's unwavering support. They shared a moment of connection, recalling their childhood promise to always be there for each other. The protagonist felt a warmth in their chest, appreciating Izuku's kindness and determination. However, the moment became slightly awkward when Izuku realized his hands were still resting on the protagonist's waist. After a shy request to let go, he quickly withdrew his hands, blushing even more. They both laughed off the moment and continued on their way to the nurse. At the nurse's office, Recovery Girl worked her magic on Izuku's injured finger, which amazed him as he felt the pain subside. He mentioned feeling tired afterward, prompting a light-hearted response from Recovery Girl about the energy healing required. Once they were finished, they changed back into their regular uniforms. As they exited the school, Izuku complained about being too tired to walk home. The protagonist giggled, but their laughter turned to surprise when Ida approached them. After a brief exchange of greetings, Ida checked on Izuku's finger, and they all continued toward the school gates. Just before they stepped through, Uraraka called out to them, running to catch up. The protagonist congratulated her on her performance in the test, and she responded warmly, inviting them to call her Ochako, emphasizing their newfound friendship. Blushing, she nodded and smiled back, realizing that maybe she wasn't as bad as she had thought. She asked if they were going to the station and if she could join them. They all nodded in agreement. "Oh, you're the Infinity Girl!" Tenya Ida exclaimed. "Yup, that's me. I'm Ochako Uraraka. You must be Tenya Ida, and you must be Izuku, right?" she said. A laugh escaped as she called him Izuku by the nickname Deku, a name Bakugo often used to tease him. It was quite amusing. "Isn't that what Bakugo calls you?" she asked, looking puzzled. Izuku explained that while his real name was Izuku, Deku was a nickname meant to poke fun at him. Ochako quickly apologized, but then added that she actually liked the name Deku, thinking it could make a great hero name and that it sounded kind of cute. She had a point, and after relaxing from the laughter, he smiled. "Deku it is," Izuku declared, his face turning a shade of red. Ida expressed surprise at how quickly Izuku accepted the nickname, and Izuku began mumbling again, which made everyone laugh, especially Ochako, who looked even more confused. This was a new experience for him, making more friends. Usually he only talked to Izuku, but this felt different. A good different. He had survived his first day at U and made new friends. What a day it had been. The next day, he found himself sitting at his desk in English class, trying not to doze off. They had regular classes in the mornings, starting with English, followed by math, biology, and history. After that, there were 4 more PRDS focused on hero training. All right, students. Which of these 4 sentences contains a mistake? Present Mike asked, pointing to the sentences he had written on the board. He was their English teacher, and while he was enthusiastic, it was hard to stay awake. Hey everybody, look alive. Grammar rules. He shouted, prompting him to rest his head on the desk, ignoring the discomfort. At lunch, they gathered in the main cafeteria, which was enormous, offering delicious food at reasonable prices. The chef, known as Lunch Rush, was a cook hero whose meals were so amazing that he jokingly thought about bringing him home to cook for him every day. Finally, it was time for afternoon classes, which meant his favorite part, hero basic training. They were in their homeroom class, waiting for their instructor. Suddenly, a familiar voice boomed from the door. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might announced cheerfully. Excitement filled the room as everyone realized he was teaching that day. All Might welcomed them to the most important class at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃𝐞𝐭, where they would learn the basics of being a pro. Today's lesson was about battle, and the enthusiasm was palpable. Just fight training. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃𝐞𝐭 exclaimed, while Izuku expressed his concerns quietly. All Might emphasized that looking good was also essential for heroes and revealed that their costumes had been designed based on their Quirk registration forms. The excitement grew as they prepared to change into their costumes. Afterward, they walked through a dark tunnel leading to Training Ground Beta, where All Might awaited them. As they emerged, All Might proudly declared that they were proof of the pro's craftsmanship. He had never seen him this excited before, and it reminded him of when he and Izuku completed their training with All Might. Now that you're all ready, it's time for combat training. All Might announced. Iida inquired if they would be conducting urban battles again, revealing his identity under the armor. All Might explained that they would be split into teams, with one team as heroes and the other as villains, engaging in indoor battles. He acknowledged that this was a bit advanced but emphasized that the best training came from real battlefield experiences. As questions began to flood in, All Might grew slightly annoyed but quickly regained his composure. He opened a small book, presumably a script, and prepared to explain the situation for their upcoming training exercise. The villains had hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout, and the heroes needed to thwart their plans. To do this, the heroes would have to either capture the villains or recover the weapon. Conversely, the villains would succeed if they protected their nuclear weapon or captured the heroes. It sounded like an action movie setup. Time was limited, and teams would be chosen by drawing lots. With 21 students present, one of them would not participate in the battle and would watch instead. All Might explain the situation, and Iida questioned the method of drawing lots. Izuku pointed out that professionals often had to team up with heroes from different agencies on the spot, which was likely the reason for this approach. Iida acknowledged this, apologizing for his rudeness. All Might excitedly announced the team pairings. Team A, Izuku Midoriya with Ochako Uraraka. Team B, Mizo Shoji with Shoto Todoroki. Team C, Minoru Mineta with Momo Yaoyorozu. Team D, Katsuki Bakugo with Tenya Iida. Team E, Mina Ishido with Yuga Aoyama. Team F, Rikido Sato with Koji Koda. Team G, Denki Kaminari with 𝐾𝐭𝐲𝐬. Team H, Fu-Mikage Tokoyami with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬. Team I, Masahiro Ijiro with Toru Hagakure. Team J, Mantasiro with Ijiro Kirishima. Uraraka was thrilled to be paired with Izuku, exclaiming her excitement. All Might then called me over, pulling me aside to share a secret. He explained that, contrary to what he had said earlier, I would not just be a spectator. Instead, I would assist one of the teams in each round, choosing to be either a villain or a hero. My task was to help the team I selected without revealing my presence to anyone. He handed me a bracelet that granted invisibility, assuring me that even if it came off during the battle, the computers would not detect me as long as I wore a green necklace. I was instructed to act sick when we returned to class, allowing me to sneak away unnoticed. After receiving a pass to the nurse from All Might, I pretended to feel unwell, prompting concern from Izuku. I assured him I was fine but needed to rest. As I walked into the tunnel, I felt guilty for lying to him. Once I was out of sight, I put on the bracelet and made my way back to the others. Testing the bracelet, I waved my arms in front of Izuku, who didn't see me. All Might was preparing to draw the first teams from boxes labeled villains and heroes. The first matchup was announced, Team D, consisting of Bakugo and Ida, against Team A, which included Izuku and 𝗟𝗏. I felt a rush of anxiety, knowing this would be Izuku's first battle against Bakugo. I decided to stick around the second floor, aware that the weapon was on the fifth floor and that Bakugo would likely target Izuku. As I roamed the hallways, I heard the elevator ding, indicating that Bakugo and Ida were heading to the fifth floor. Peering out a window, I spotted Izuku and 𝗟𝗏 studying floor plans, and I noticed Izuku sweating, clearly nervous about facing Bakugo. All Might's voice echoed through the speakers, signaling the start of the battle. I continued to search for Izuku and 𝗟𝗏, navigating the maze-like building. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted nearby. I rushed toward the sound and turned a corner to find Bakugo. On the ground, I saw Izuku and 𝗟𝗏 struggling to get up. I quietly approached them, ready to assist as Bakugo prepared for his next move. I noticed Izuku's mask was partially burned, but thankfully, his face appeared unharmed. Izuku managed to get up and asked 𝗟𝗏 if she was okay. She reassured him that she was fine, but the tension in the air was palpable as the battle unfolded. 𝗟𝗏 expressed her concern as she noticed Deku's mask. He reassured her, saying it was just his mask and removed it as the smoke cleared. Bakugo taunted Deku, questioning his courage to stand and fight. 𝗟𝗏 felt conflicted about when to help Izuku. She didn't want to intervene because he might see it as cheating and be upset with her. It pained her to admit it, but she decided that Izuku had to handle this battle on his own. Her priority was to protect 𝗟𝗏, confident that Izuku was strong and smart enough to manage without her assistance unless the situation became dire. She resolved to stay close to him for now, ensuring 𝗟𝗏's safety. Izuku, feeling the pressure, acknowledged Bakugo's predictable attack style, recalling how he had studied him over the years. He had learned from every hero, including Bakugo, and was determined to prove that he had changed. He declared that the name Deku would now represent a hero, filling 𝗟𝗏 with pride as she watched him grow before her eyes. She whispered his name softly, knowing All Might would be proud of him. She understood that while she wouldn't interfere, she would step in if Bakugo crossed a line. As the battle continued, Ida attempted to communicate with Bakugo, but Bakugo dismissed him, focusing on the fight. When Bakugo charged at Izuku, he blocked the attack and began to wrap Bakugo in white tape, a move that would eliminate him from the game. However, Bakugo was quick to retaliate, and Izuku narrowly dodged his punch. Izuku's knowledge of Bakugo's tactics was proving useful, but 𝗟𝗏 knew Bakugo would adapt his strategy, so she had to be ready to intervene. Suddenly, Izuku darted away, leaving Bakugo and 𝗟𝗏 momentarily confused. Seizing the opportunity, she tripped Bakugo before he could pursue Izuku, finding amusement in the moment. However, in her distraction, she bumped into Izuku, causing her bracelet to fall off. Realizing the fun was over, she quickly covered Izuku's mouth to keep him quiet. As they ran, she explained her presence and intentions. Izuku was surprised to learn she had been watching the fight, and she admitted she wanted to help earlier but felt he was handling it well. They paused to catch their breath, and 𝗟𝗏 made it clear that if things escalated, she would step in, regardless of what Izuku thought. Her determination was evident, even as tears threatened to spill. The concern weighed heavily on the protagonist as they expressed their fears about Izuku getting hurt. They couldn't bear the thought of standing by while danger loomed, feeling an overwhelming love that compelled them to protect him. Just then, a soft warmth brushed against their lips, surprising them. It was Izuku Midoriya, their best friend since childhood, kissing them in a moment that took their breath away. As they pulled away, the protagonist felt a rush of warmth and embarrassment, unsure of how to respond. Izuku, with a gentle smile, revealed his own feelings, urging them to trust him and stay out of the fight. He promised he would be okay, and they shared a shy smile, both blushing at the unexpected intimacy. As they prepared for the confrontation ahead, Izuku returned a bracelet that allowed the protagonist to deactivate their quirk and turn invisible once more. Hand in hand, they approached Bakugo, who suddenly radiated an intense energy, making the protagonist's heart race with anxiety. Bakugo's growl echoed ominously as he taunted Izuku, challenging him to show his true strength. Izuku, determined, gripped the white tape tightly, instructing the protagonist to stay back. Bakugo's anger seemed to fuel his power, and he boasted about his explosive quirk, revealing the danger it posed. The protagonist felt a surge of dread as Bakugo prepared for a massive blast, knowing they had to act quickly. They activated their earpiece, hearing All Might's urgent warning to Bakugo, but time felt like it was slipping away. In a moment of desperation, the protagonist rushed to shield Izuku, conjuring a protective blue barrier just in time to absorb the brunt of the explosion. The force of the blast sent them flying, and as the smoke cleared, the destruction was evident. The building bore the scars of the explosion, and the protagonist's heart raced with concern for their friends. They checked on Izuku, relieved to see he had only minor injuries. However, their own bracelet lay broken, exposing them to Bakugo's wrath. Bakugo's taunts echoed through the air, and the protagonist felt a mix of fear and determination. They knew they had to find a way to turn the tide of the battle. As Bakugo advanced, the protagonist's hand glowed blue once more, a sign of their quirk activating instinctively. They exchanged worried glances with Izuku, who was clearly feeling the weight of the situation. The tension was palpable as Bakugo challenged them, his eyes wild with intensity. The protagonist whispered to Izuku, urging him to come up with a plan, knowing they were in a precarious position. Izuku, resolute, activated his earpiece, calling for 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐿, hoping for a solution before it was too late. "What's the situation?" he asked, hoping for good news. Unfortunately, luck was not on their side. "It's not good," she yelled through the earpiece. He regretted not going to help her. Perhaps if he had, this whole ordeal would be over by now. "Are you ignoring me again? Fine. I'll get your attention." Bakugo shouted, raising his left hand. "Bakugo, use that stored-up weapon again, and I'll stop this fight. Your team will lose." All Might warned through the earpiece. Maybe now Bakugo would ease up a bit. "What?" he yelled, clearly furious at All Might. To attack on such a large scale inside is inviting the destruction of the stronghold you should be protecting. That's poor strategy, whether you're a hero or a villain. The penalty will be a massive loss of points, All Might threatened, making Bakugo angrier. "Go to the pillar by the windows. Over and out." Izuku quickly instructed 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐿. Did he even hear what All Might was saying? Not that he needed to, but still. "Fine then. We'll fight hand to hand." Bakugo growled, charging toward them with full force. They couldn't dodge this. Suddenly he was pushed out of the way. He looked back to see Bakugo behind Izuku, unleashing an explosion that propelled Izuku forward. Izuku managed to stay on his feet, but then Bakugo taunted him. "Here it comes, nerd. The famous right hook you were writing about." Bakugo yelled as he swung at Izuku, causing him to cry out in pain. He had to do something fast, but Izuku had told him not to interfere unless instructed. "Don't you ever forget what you are." Bakugo yelled as he grabbed Izuku's elbow and slammed him to the ground. "You're a weakling. Just like your good excuse for a girlfriend." Bakugo continued, tears streaming down his face. "That was it." "Izuku," she cried, getting up. She couldn't watch this any longer. She didn't understand why All Might hadn't intervened yet. "I'm fine," Izuku shouted, making her stop before she could go any further. He was lying. He was pretending to be okay to keep her out of the fight. Watching Izuku run in the opposite direction confused her. What was he doing? Did he have a plan? Izuku stopped against the wall opposite her. "Why won't you use your quirk against me? Still think you can stop me without it? How about your girlfriend? Can she use it too?" Bakugo sneered, glaring at her. "You leave her out of this. This is between you and me." Izuku yelled, making Bakugo face him again. "Then answer me. Do you think you can stop me without your quirk?" Bakugo demanded. "That's not it." Izuku began, glaring back. "You've been hiding your true power for years. You and 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸. What's the deal? Did you two think you were better than me this entire time? 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬 shouted, his rage escalating. She stood frozen, waiting to see how Izuku would respond, but his next words shocked her. That's what you think? You idiot. You've always been stronger, 𝐾𝐿. I know you're better than me. Izuku yelled, tears in his eyes. Can't you see? That's why I want to beat you without the help of Y/N or anyone. Because you're amazing. He finished, clenching his fist and activating One for All. You're even more of an idiot than I realized. 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬 growled as they both charged at each other simultaneously. This was getting out of hand. Detroit, Izuku began to say as he ran full force. They were going to hurt each other. All Might, stop this, she yelled into the earpiece, but he didn't respond. She was about to intervene when she heard All Might. Both of you 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐩𝐸 𝐿 now. Izuku shouted, interrupting All Might as he punched upward with his right hand, using the other to block 𝐒𝐿𝐴's explosion attack. Smash! 𝐒𝐿𝐴's eyes widened as a powerful gust of wind erupted from Izuku's punch, creating a large hole above them, making her realize the situation. He knew that the weapon and Uraraka and Ida were above them, so he used One for All to give Uraraka a better chance to reach the weapon and use the debris to distract Ida. Izuku understood they couldn't win by battling 𝐒𝐿𝐴 alone, so he left the victory to Uraraka, who had a better chance. She closed her eyes, shielding her face from the strong wind. Once everything calmed down, she opened her eyes to see a shocked 𝐒𝐿𝐴 and an injured Izuku. This was your big plan. From the very beginning, wasn't it? You were playing me this entire time, 𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐸. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 yelled, unable to believe he had been defeated. I wasn't going to use it, because I can't control it, Izuku said, struggling through the pain. She slowly walked toward them, fresh tears streaming down her face. My body just can't handle the backlash of my power yet. Mr. Aizawa said I'd be useless. But this was all that I could think of doing. Without the help of F/N, Izuku whispered, and 𝐒𝐿𝐴's eyes widened. Didn't you notice? She didn't fight at all this whole time. Because I told her not to for me. He finished with a pained smile, tears flowing down his cheeks. Izuku, she cried, stopping a few inches away from him. That strategy. That was the only way I had any chance of winning. Izuku concluded, while 𝐒𝐿𝐴 stood frozen, his eyes wide with confusion as he processed what had just happened. A buzz echoed through the building, signaling that time was up. Izuku and Uraraka had won just in time. Quickly moving behind Izuku, she caught him just as he released a relieved sigh and fell. Sitting on the ground, she hugged him gently as she sobbed. You did it, Izuku. You won. She whispered in his ear as he lost consciousness. The hero team wins. All Might announced through the earpiece, sounding as proud as ever yet worried. After the battle, Izuku was taken to the nurse's office. Although the narrator wanted to stay with him, All Might advised them to continue battling, explaining that they would only be in the way and waiting in the waiting room. In a flashback, All Might informed the narrator that they needed to remain with the rest of the class. The narrator felt disheartened, wiping away tears as they questioned why they couldn't stay with Izuku. All Might acknowledged that everyone was aware of their presence but emphasized that they needed to make a choice, to side with the heroes, the villains, or remain neutral. The narrator asked what it meant to be neutral, and All Might suggested they could observe the battles, learn about the quirks, and use that knowledge to help Izuku later. He encouraged them to change into gym clothes, assuring them that Izuku would be okay and that they could see him after the battles. With that reassurance, they walked together with 𝐒𝐿𝐴, who remained silent. Back in the present, All Might provided everyone with a new map to a building known as Battle Building B. The teams consisted of Team B, featuring Todoroki and Shoji as heroes, and Team I, comprising 𝐼𝐺𝐸 and 𝐒𝐮𝐽 as villains. The narrator chose to watch this round from the monitor room. They observed as Shoji transformed one of his 6 arms into an ear and another into a mouth to communicate with Todoroki, though the narrator couldn't hear their conversation. Todoroki then approached a wall, and the narrator noticed Shoji exiting the room, puzzled until Todoroki froze the entire building. Although they were in the basement, It was now frigid but not completely frozen. The narrator tucked their cold hands into their pockets and shifted their attention to another monitor, noticing that the villains were immobilized by ice. Todoroki entered the room and touched the weapon, securing victory for his team. He then melted the ice surrounding the building using his heat ability, revealing that he possessed a second quirk. The narrator speculated that there was more to his quirk than just melting ice but decided not to inquire further. As the monitor room warmed up, the narrator felt relieved. They noted Shoji's quirk was dupli arm, Todoroki's was half cold, half hot, 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 was permanently invisible, and 𝐼𝐺𝐸 had a tail. The next teams to compete were Team J, consisting of 𝐼𝐻 and Kirishima as villains, and Team H, featuring Tokoyami and Azui as heroes. The narrator opted to watch again, feeling a strong longing to check on Izuku instead of participating in the battles. Their concern for Izuku overshadowed their eagerness to fight, but they remained committed to supporting him. As the battles continued, the narrator remained an observer. At one point, All Might encouraged them to choose a team and join the fight, but the narrator expressed that they didn't feel well enough to battle. With a sad smile, All Might allowed them to continue watching. The narrator had also put on the anti-quirk bracelet All Might had given them, hoping to rest from their powers. Even without using their abilities, they felt drained, as if their powers were sapping their energy. They hoped to adapt to their strength eventually. Once the battles concluded, All Might dismissed everyone, and the narrator hurried to the girls' locker room to change into their regular uniform. The other girls sensed the narrator's sadness and worry as they quietly prepared. After putting on their school shoes, the narrator dashed to the nurse's office. Upon entering, they found All Might in his weakened form, alongside Recovery Girl and Izuku, who lay in bed with bandages on both arms. The narrator asked about Izuku's condition, eager for any news. Recovery Girl reassured them that Izuku was fine but needed plenty of rest. She expressed her frustration, explaining that healing all of Izuku's injuries at once was impossible. All Might defended his decision to support Izuku, emphasizing the importance of allowing him to see his potential. Recovery Girl retorted sarcastically, reminding him of his reputation as a hero while typing on her computer. They asked the narrator to step out briefly to discuss something. Moments later, All Might returned and allowed the narrator back in. Seeing Izuku in a hospital bed was disheartening. The narrator worried about the toll his powers were taking on his body. They wondered how long Recovery Girl could help him. Time passed, and the narrator found themselves in class, resting their head on their hands while gazing out the slightly opened window. The gentle breeze occasionally brushed against them, providing a moment of relaxation amidst the chatter of their classmates. We only had 30 minutes until dismissal since we finished All Might's exercise early. Closing my eyes, I breathed in slowly, trying to calm myself down a bit more as I heard the door open. Curious about who it was, I lazily turned my head toward the door. When I saw who it was, I instantly stood up, regretting it as everything in the room began to spin a little. Grabbing my head, I closed my eyes for a second and opened them again to see everyone gathered around the very person who had stayed on my mind all day, Izuku. Everyone complimented him on how awesome he was and how cool he looked during the battle. They all introduced themselves to him too. As Ida began to argue with Tokoyami, I just stared at Izuku, who awkwardly laughed, until we finally made eye contact. When he softly smiled at me, I began to blush and look down, feeling dizzy again. What should I say? Did he even remember the kiss? Izuku greeted me in a soft tone as he stood in front of me, very close. He asked how I was feeling and I fiddled with my fingers, still not looking at him. He placed a gentle hand on my chin, raising my head so I could look at him. If it hadn't been for the nice breeze coming in through the window, I probably would have fainted from how hot it was in there. I insisted I was fine, but my mind was racing. Maybe he did forget. He then asked if this was about the kiss, smirking at me. I felt my heart race. He hadn't forgotten. What should I say? I struggled to speak as my face turned tomato red. He chuckled, patting my head, and mentioned that we would talk more about it later but asked if I had seen Kaken because he needed to speak with him. Uraraka pointed out the window, saying that we had tried to stop Bakugo from leaving, but he wouldn't listen. I told Izuku that he might catch up to him if he ran. He dashed out, and I looked out the window just in time to see 𝐃𝐿 leaving the school. Seconds later, I saw Izuku following him. They were talking until 𝐃𝐿 started to raise his voice. I decided to go outside, worried 𝐃𝐿 might do something again, but as I walked out, I saw All Might talking to 𝐃𝐿 a few feet away from where Izuku stood. I walked next to Izuku and asked him what had happened. He told me he would explain later as he let out a sigh. All Might asked Izuku what he had been saying to 𝐃𝐿 before he arrived so heroically. Izuku, trying to maintain his composure, insisted it was nothing special, but he was clearly nervous. All Might, with a humorous tone, expressed his curiosity, wanting to know all the juicy details. I couldn't help but giggle at the scene. Izuku, smiling nervously, admitted that he had kind of forgotten. After school ended, Izuku and I successfully dodged All Might's questions as we made up an excuse to leave. Moments later, we were walking home together in silence, my mind drifting back to the moment Izuku and I had shared during the indoor battle test. My face grew warm as the memory of him kissing me replayed in my mind. I recalled that he had said he loved me. Maybe I should ask him about that. Gathering all my courage, I looked down and asked Izuku if he really meant everything he said during the indoor battle test. We stopped walking, standing just 2 houses away from both of our homes. He seemed confused and asked which part one meant. I hesitated before mentioning the part where he said he loved me after he kissed me, my voice becoming quieter at the end. I probably looked like a cherry by now. He gave me a sweet smile, his eyes soft as he grabbed my hands, pulling me closer. His face was only a few inches away from mine. He confessed that he had wanted to tell me for a long time. I was shocked and confused, asking him why he hadn't. He admitted he was afraid I wouldn't like him back because of how much of a loser he thought he was. He didn't want to lose me as a friend or make our friendship awkward, so he kept quiet. Feeling a rush of affection, I kissed his cheek, making him look at me, his cheeks beginning to turn an appealing shade of pink. I told him I liked him too, and he smiled, bringing his face close to mine for a second kiss. It was sweet and felt both familiar and different from the first. Slowly pulling away, we looked into each other's eyes, and I giggled because Izuku looked so cute with a flushed face. He asked why I was giggling, and I told him it was because he looked adorable when he blushed. He rolled his eyes playfully and pulled me in for another kiss. After a few minutes, we pulled away, and he looked at me with so much love that I felt like I was dreaming. We were on cloud 9. He asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend, and I replied with the biggest smile, saying I would love to. He hugged me tightly and kissed my face, making me laugh. Walking home hand in hand, I hoped with all my heart as I watched the sun go down, that we would stay happy like this forever. This morning, Izuku and the narrator walked hand in hand to school, filled with happiness about their new relationship. They decided not to keep it a secret, as they preferred to be open about it. Upon arriving at school, they encountered reporters asking students about their experiences being taught by the symbol of peace, All Might. Izuku quickly made an excuse about needing to visit the nurse, allowing them to escape and take a leisurely walk down the halls, chatting about various topics until class began. As class commenced, Mr. Izuku acknowledged the students' performance in the previous day's combat training. He reviewed each team's results, focusing on the narrator at the end. The narrator felt a wave of anxiety, fearing their performance had been poor. Mr. Izuku reassured 𝐃𝐿, encouraging him not to sulk over his loss. Midoriya was called out for winning his match through a mishap with his arm and some unexpected assistance from the special surprise, which was the narrator. Mr. Izuku emphasized the need for Midoriya to work harder and to stop using the excuse of lacking control over his quirk. He noted that Midoriya's quirk had great potential if he could manage it effectively. Finally, Mr. Izuku turned his attention to the narrator, commenting on the entertaining nature of their performance in the training video. He praised the clever strategy used against 𝐃𝐿 and the impressive blue shield that had protected them during a critical moment. However, he suggested that strengthening the shield would be beneficial for future encounters. Just as he was about to mention a more personal moment between the narrator and Midoriya, the narrator interrupted, feeling embarrassed and drawing the attention of the entire class, except for Izuku, who blushed. Mr. Izuku chuckled and redirected the class's focus to the day's agenda. However, one student interrupted, eager to know more about the narrator and Midoriya's moment. Mr. Izuku teased that they could ask the narrator during lunch, prompting another glare from the narrator. He then revealed that the first task would be to elect a class representative, which caught everyone off guard. The room fell silent, and the tension was palpable. Mr. Izuku clarified that they needed to choose a representative democratically, leading to a flurry of students vying for the position. The narrator observed Izuku nervously raising his hand, while others clamored for votes, emphasizing the importance of the role in gaining recognition from agencies and professionals. Ida, taking charge, insisted on the significance of trust in leadership and proposed a democratic election. Some students expressed skepticism, questioning how they could trust one another after only a few days. Ida remained firm, arguing that the candidate with the most votes would be the most suitable for the role. Mr. Izuku, uninterested, instructed them to finalize their decision before his nap was over. After the voting concluded, Ida tallied the results, revealing that both the narrator and Izuku had received 3 votes each, resulting in a tie. The narrator was shocked at the unexpected support, while 𝐂𝐵𝐸, frustrated, demanded to know who had voted for them. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 laughed, and the rest of the class joined in as he began to complain. Mr. Izuku woke up, and Midoriya stood beside me along with 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬. Mr. Izuku announced that our class representatives were Midoriya and me, since we had tied, and that 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬 would be the class deputy. I quickly expressed my reluctance to take on the role of class representative, suggesting that Izuku could have it to himself. The class reacted with shock, except for 𝐂𝐵𝐸 and Todoroki, who remained silent. I explained that being class rep just wasn't my thing. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 then suggested that I could be the class princess. Confused, I asked what that even meant. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 chimed in, explaining that a class princess would assist the rep and deputy, help organize events, and could even give orders to the rest of the class. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 added that I resembled a princess and acted like one, making it a fitting title. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚 reminded everyone of my bravery during the entrance exams when I saved a girl from a giant robot villain, something not every newcomer could do. 𝐂𝐵𝐸 interrupted, claiming that only 𝐒𝐮𝐦 was a newbie, but I countered that he was too. I told him to stop being rude, which left him momentarily shocked. The class smiled at my defense, and 𝐒𝐮𝐦 pointed out that I had stood up to 𝐂𝐵𝐸. I considered the idea of being class princess and finally relented, rolling my eyes as I agreed. The class cheered, and I felt a wave of affection for my classmates. During lunch, I sat with Ida, Uraraka, and Izuku. Uraraka remarked on how crowded the cafeteria was, and Ida explained that it was shared by all courses. Uraraka enjoyed her rice, while I noticed that Izuku hadn't touched his food. Concerned, I nudged him and asked if he was okay. He sighed, expressing his worries about not being qualified for the class rep position. Ida and Uraraka reassured him, with Ida noting that Izuku's courage and quick thinking made him a worthy leader. Izuku was surprised to learn that Ida had voted for him, and Uraraka pointed out that Ida looked the part of a class rep with his glasses. I giggled at her silliness, but Ida reminded us that wanting the position and being suited for it were different matters. When Ida mentioned his family's agency, we all became curious about what they did. Ida hesitated, fearing that people would treat him differently if they knew about his family's wealth. He eventually shared that one of his brothers was a pro hero, which made him quite fortunate. Suddenly, my classmates approached, excluding 𝐂𝐵𝐸, Todoroki, and a few others. Ashido smirked and asked what had happened between me and Midoriya during the battle test. I realized that Mr. Izuku had instructed them to ask me during lunch, which caught me off guard. Izuku turned red and stuffed his mouth with food, leaving me to fend for myself. I stammered that nothing had happened, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬 pressed for more details, making my face feel hot. Just as I was about to reveal the truth, an alarm rang out, prompting Uraraka to ask what was happening. The intercom announced a Level 3 security breach, instructing all students to evacuate the building in an orderly fashion. I asked what a Level 3 breach meant, and a student explained that someone had gotten past the school's barriers, something that hadn't occurred in his 3 years there. We all got up and rushed to the halls, where chaos ensued as students pushed against each other in a frantic attempt to escape. I found myself squeezed against the window with Ida, Uriarika, and Izuku, while the rest of our class seemed to have vanished into the crowd. Uriarika exclaimed how chaotic it was, and Ida noted that the quick reactions were typical of you. Students, though Izuku pointed out that the panic was overwhelming. I wondered who could have trespassed as I looked out the window and spotted reporters gathered in front of the school's closed red and gold doors. Aizawa and Present Mike stood in front of the class. Ida attempted to calm the rising panic, but he was pushed toward the window. Frustration bubbled within him as he exclaimed about the teachers not taking control of the situation. Suddenly, an idea struck him when he spotted the exit. He called out to Ida and Uriarika, sharing his plan to restore order. Uriarika was instructed to touch Ida's hand to make him float above the crowd. Once Ida was airborne, Uriarika would use her speed to reach the front and capture everyone's attention. They understood the plan, and Ida expressed his gratitude, feeling confident about what he would say. With Uriarika's help, Ida floated up and sped to the front, quickly gaining the attention of the students. He landed on top of the exit sign, grabbing the pole above him for support. With a powerful voice, he declared that everything was okay. He reassured everyone that it was just the media outside and that they needed to remain calm as you. Students, proving they were the best of the best. A collective sigh of relief filled the hallway, and Ida unknowingly solidified his role as the true class representative. After the chaos settled, the class returned to their room. Discussions arose about appointing Ida as class rep, and the majority agreed. As they sat in class, Izuku and Yaoyorozu prepared to begin. Yaoyorozu prompted Ida to take charge, unaware of the decision already made. Izuku, feeling nervous, looked serious as he prepared to speak. He expressed his belief that Tenya Ida should be the class representative, catching the attention of those who were aware of the plan and surprising the rest. Ida's ability to command attention and organize the class was acknowledged, and Izuku's endorsement brought smiles to many faces. 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐃𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 chimed in, supporting Ida's nomination, and the class echoed their agreement. Mr. Aizawa, resting in his sleeping bag, interrupted, expressing his indifference toward the class rep as he dozed off again. Ida stood, accepting the nomination with determination. He pledged to fulfill the duties of class rep to the best of his abilities, crediting Uriarika for her role in the plan. He thanked her and expressed excitement about working together. Uriarika blushed at the compliment, while Izuku confirmed Uriarika's contribution to the idea. The class cheered, and Uriarika laughed nervously, feeling the warmth of their camaraderie. Little did they know, a greater challenge loomed ahead. It was not the media that had breached the gates. A villain was responsible for the impending conflict. After the class celebrated, Ida and Yaoyorozu selected the other class officers. Aizawa then woke up to explain the upcoming training. He informed them that 3 instructors, including 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐷, would oversee the session. The training would focus on rescue operations involving natural disasters, which excited everyone, including Izuku, who was cautious about overusing his abilities. As the class buzzed with excitement, Aizawa reminded them to listen. He mentioned that their costumes were their choice for the exercise and activated a controller that revealed their outfits. Izuku noted that his costume was still damaged, while Uriarika inquired about his clothes. The anticipation for the training was palpable as they prepared to showcase their skills. He explained that he was still waiting on the support company to fix things up. I encouraged everyone to start lining up, and as soon as I did, Ida blew his whistle. He announced for Class 1A to gather around and form 2 neat lines using their student numbers so they could board the bus efficiently. Izuku and Uriarika exchanged glances, clearly feeling the pressure of Ida's enthusiasm. Izuku commented on how Ida was really stepping up as class representative, and I agreed, urging everyone to board the bus. Once we were on our way to the training location, Ida expressed his frustration about the bus's open layout ruining his boarding strategy. Ishido tried to lighten the mood by telling him to relax. Tsuyu then pointed out something about Izuku's quirk, suggesting it was similar to 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐷's. This caught both Izuku and me off guard. He seemed surprised by the comparison, mumbling his thoughts before I pointed out that 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐷 didn't hurt himself when using his quirk, which made Izuku visibly relieved. 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐷 chimed in, expressing that while his hardening quirk was powerful, it lacked the flashy appeal of others. Izuku, always fascinated by Quirks, complimented 𝐒𝐮𝐲's abilities, which made 𝐒𝐮𝐬 question his own worthiness as a pro hero. Aoyama then boasted about his naval lasers, but Ishido teased him about the stomach aches it caused, leaving him sulking. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 noted that if anyone in our class had pro-level quirks, it would be me, Bakugo, and Todoroki. Tsuyu added that I was chosen to be class princess due to my diverse set of quirks, likening me to a quirk queen. I smiled at her insight. However, she also pointed out Bakugo's temper, which only served to irritate him further. Bakugo, furious, threatened Tsuyu, and I felt a surge of anger at his words. I decided to stretch my arm towards him and gave him a light smack on the head, surprising Izuku with my newfound ability. I defended Tsuyu, and Tsuyu reiterated that Bakugo would never be popular. Kaminari humorously remarked on Bakugo's personality, which only fueled Bakugo's anger. Just as Bakugo was about to explode with rage, Aizawa intervened, telling us to settle down as we arrived at our destination. I looked out the window to see a massive dome, and once we got off the bus, I stretched my limbs, feeling the fatigue of the ride. Approaching the dome, we were greeted by the space hero, 13, who welcomed us enthusiastically. Uraraka and the others were thrilled to see one of their favorite heroes. 13 expressed excitement about showing us what was inside, and we all entered the dome in awe. The various disaster simulation stations looked incredible, resembling an amusement park. 13 explained that he created this training facility, called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, to prepare us for different types of disasters. Aizawa, however, noted that All Might was late, speculating that he might have been caught up in an interview. 13 quietly revealed that All Might had exhausted himself from hero work that morning and was resting in the teacher's lounge. I sighed, wishing All Might would take better care of himself, understanding the weight of being the symbol of peace. Aizawa remarked on All Might's irresponsibility but assured us that we would be fine with just the two of them. He urged us to get started, and 13, struggling to contain his excitement, began to explain his powerful quirk, Black Hole, which could absorb anything. Izuku recognized 13's quirk from past rescues, but 13 warned us that it could also be dangerous. He then asked if there was a student in our class who possessed every quirk in the world, prompting me to raise my hand nervously when he inquired about my name. 13 informed 𝐹/N that he would be glad to teach her this quirk at some point. It would be challenging, but with patience and practice, he believed she could master it, along with her other quirks. Filled with excitement, 𝐹/N nodded with determination. In their superhuman society, personal quirks had been certified and regulated, which seemed fine at first glance. However, 13 reminded everyone that many quirks could be dangerous if misused. With Aizawa's physical fitness test, 𝐹/N had discovered her hidden powers, and through All Might's combat training, she had experienced the risks of using those powers against others. This class was a fresh start, where she would learn to use her quirks to save lives, not to harm others. 13 hoped everyone would leave with the understanding that their powers were meant to help. After finishing his speech, 13 thanked everyone, and they all cheered. Just as Aizawa was about to speak, the lights suddenly went out. 𝐹/N looked behind 13 to see the fountain flickering before a dark swirl appeared. She pointed it out, and everyone watched as the swirl transformed into a shadow with yellow eyes. A man with pale skin and numerous hands emerged from the shadow, accompanied by a group of villains. Fear gripped 𝐹/N as she watched the scene unfold. Aizawa instructed everyone to stay together and not to move, positioning himself and 13 in front of the group. 𝐹/N silently hoped All Might would recover quickly and arrive. Aizawa put on his goggles, signaling that this was not part of their training. He declared that the villains were real, causing gasps from the others. They had all expected a fun training day, but reality had proven them wrong. As the villains emerged one by one, 𝐹/N felt her heart race, and she noticed Izuku was visibly shaken. She took his hand, reassuring him that 13 and Aizawa were professionals who could handle the situation. Izuku expressed his concern about the number of villains, worried that two heroes couldn't manage on their own. 𝐹/N felt helpless, unsure of what to do. Aizawa confronted the villains, questioning how they had infiltrated the campus. 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐬 asked about the lack of alarms, and 13 admitted uncertainty. Todoroki speculated whether the entire campus was under attack or if they were the only target. It became clear that one of the villains must be masking their presence, allowing them to infiltrate during a class. They had chosen this isolated facility strategically, and whatever their plan was, it seemed well thought out. As the villains approached, Aizawa ordered 13 to evacuate everyone and alert the main campus. He instructed Kaminari to use his quirk to contact the school, but 𝐿/N felt a surge of panic. She insisted on helping Aizawa, arguing that he couldn't fight the villains alone. Aizawa firmly declined, reminding her to keep her powers hidden. Despite her protests about his fighting style not being suited for a group, he remained resolute, emphasizing that she couldn't rely on just one trick. With a commanding shout, Aizawa left it to 13 and engaged the villains. 𝐿/N watched in awe as he fought with remarkable skill, revealing his true abilities. Ida urged 𝐿/N to follow him toward the exit, but their escape was halted by the appearance of the shadowy figure. The villain introduced himself and his group, the League of Villains, expressing their impolite intrusion into the haven of justice. He taunted them about All Might, suggesting that this was a fitting place for him to meet his end. 𝐿/N felt a chill run through her as the villain continued, noting All Might's absence and hinting at a larger plan. Just as 13 prepared to act, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and 𝐃𝐭𝐚𝐲 charged in recklessly, prompting a chaotic explosion that filled the area with smoke. As the smoke began to clear, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 challenged the villains, ready to defend their ground. The shadowy figure reappeared, a metallic object glinting around his neck. He warned the group to be cautious, or someone might get hurt. Suddenly, a voice called out, urging everyone to move aside. The shadow man growled, declaring his intention to scatter them and cause suffering. As darkness enveloped them, a rush of wind hit their faces, and they found themselves plunging into water. Upon surfacing, they realized they were in a shipwreck zone. Izuku and Mineta were nearby, and Tsuyu, with her quick reflexes, saved one of them by using her tongue to pull them to safety. The atmosphere was tense, and Tsuyu expressed her frustration about the day's events. They all reflected on the Shadow Man's ominous words regarding All Might, realizing that the villains had likely infiltrated their school records. Izuku shared his thoughts on the villains' planning, suggesting that they had devised a way to attack All Might. Tsuyu pointed out the danger they faced, emphasizing that they needed to focus on surviving rather than succumbing to fear. Mineta, overwhelmed, questioned their chances against the villains, who were now approaching them in the water. Determined, Izuku insisted. They had to work together to protect All Might, as no one else was aware of the situation. While Mineta expressed his doubts, Izuku remained resolute, contemplating their strategy. He noted that the villains had the advantage in the water, but they could use their surprise to their benefit. As they strategized, Izuku pointed out that the villains likely didn't know the extent of their abilities, which could work in their favor. They realized they needed to utilize their quirks to turn the tide of the battle. With a newfound sense of purpose, they prepared to face the villains, understanding that they had to act quickly and decisively. Tsuyu took the lead in discussing their quirks, and they crouched down to remain hidden from the approaching threats, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. Tsu explained her abilities, noting her impressive jumping skills and wall-clinging ability. She mentioned her long tongue and her ability to secrete a toxic mucus, which only caused a mild sting. She concluded that they could rely on her jumping and tongue, dismissing the other abilities as less useful. Izuku acknowledged Tsu's powers, expressing admiration for her abilities. He shared that while he possessed super strength, it came with a significant drawback. Using it left him exhausted and unable to fight. He then gestured for me to share my own abilities. I mentioned having every quirk but lacking full control over them, emphasizing my limits. I highlighted my proficiency with my Wind/Air quirk and my Super Stretch quirk, omitting my knowledge of One for All. Mineta chimed in, showcasing his sticky ball, which varied in strength based on his emotions. He demonstrated their sticking power and explained that while they regenerated quickly, overuse could cause him to bleed. I noted that he also had a limit, and he nodded in agreement. As we looked at Mineta, he began to tear up, overwhelmed by the situation. He expressed his frustration, feeling that his quirk was useless in battle and suggesting that we should wait for the real heroes. Izuku reassured him, insisting that Mineta had incredible potential and that they just needed to figure out how to utilize it. Just then, a massive water arm appeared, slicing the boat in two and nearly causing us to fall overboard. Mineta panicked, comparing the situation to the Titanic, but with villains causing the chaos instead of an iceberg. One of the villains taunted us, eager for the fight to begin, while 𝐶 noted the ship was sinking. Mineta, in a state of panic, started throwing his sticky ball into the water, despite Izuku's attempts to calm him down. Mineta's worry grew as he pointed out the villains, and Izuku, sensing an opportunity, lit up with determination. Izuku prepared to jump off the railing, and Mineta yelled in alarm, questioning his reckless decision. Izuku shouted a battle cry as he leaped into action, mimicking Bakugo's boldness. A villain prepared to strike him down, but Izuku made a hand gesture, indicating he would only use his fingers for his attack. 𝐶 tapped my shoulder, asking if I was ready. I nodded, understanding her plan. Izuku unleashed a powerful attack, creating a massive splash and whirlpool. He called for us to jump, and we sprang into action. I used my wind quirk to soar high, while 𝐶 held onto Mineta. 𝐶 quickly grabbed Izuku, and Mineta threw his sticky ball, ensnaring the villains together. Izuku explained the mechanics of the water force, and we watched as the villains became trapped in the center, leading to a giant water geyser that propelled the ship and the villains into the air. I cheered at the successful maneuver, and 𝐶 praised our teamwork, acknowledging that we had passed a critical point but still had more villains to face. To be continued. As I emerged from the water with 𝐶, Mineta, and Izuku, a strange vision flashed in my mind, 𝐵LD, All Might, and a desperate cry to stop. I questioned whether it was a manifestation of my quirk. Izuku noticed my pale complexion and asked if I was okay. I reassured him, though the unsettling vision lingered in my thoughts. Stop. That was when my vision faded. As I tried to shake the water from my hair, 𝐶 looked at me with concern and suggested that it might have been one of my quirks, perhaps a premonition. I shrugged it off, insisting that we shouldn't worry about it at that moment, unaware of how wrong I truly was. Izuku felt an intense pain coursing through him, but he masked it with a brave face. He knew the battle wasn't over and he couldn't afford to stop now. However, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's premonition nagged at him. What if her vision came true? He wished she could tell him how it all ended. He mumbled about their recent success in capturing the villains, lost in his thoughts until 𝐶 snapped him back to reality. 𝐒𝐮 crossed her arms and pointed out that instead of second-guessing their actions, they should focus on their next move. Izuku thought about how he wanted to ensure her safety but decided to suggest a different plan. They needed to prioritize getting help and avoid the central plaza where the main conflict was taking place. 𝐶 agreed, noting that this would help them steer clear of the villains Mr. Aizawa was facing. Izuku couldn't help but worry about Aizawa's ability to handle the situation alone. He feared that without backup, Aizawa might overexert himself trying to protect them. Mineta, overhearing their discussion, panicked at the thought of putting themselves in danger. Izuku clarified that they weren't planning to jump into the fray but thought they might find a way to assist Aizawa without drawing too much attention. Despite his frustration with the idea, he felt compelled to help. They had won their first real fight, but it had only given them a false sense of security. They were about to learn just how mistaken they were in thinking they could stand against the enemy. Little did they know that their attempt to help Aizawa would lead them into a precarious situation. 𝐒𝐮𝐬's vision returned, filled with images of fire, a girl with glowing white eyes and hair, villains frozen in time, and a haunting image of All Might fallen. She whispered an apology, feeling the weight of the vision. Izuku noticed her distress and reached for her hand, breaking her trance. He asked if she had experienced another vision, and she nodded, sharing what she had seen. Mineta's voice trembled as he expressed his growing concern about the visions. 𝐒𝐮 insisted they needed to help Aizawa and then leave quickly. 𝐶 voiced her doubts, but 𝐒𝐮 reassured them that as long as they acted swiftly, they would be fine. After a while, they approached the battle scene, hiding behind a rock near the water. Mineta reminded them to stay cautious, and they all agreed to retreat if things turned dangerous. Izuku watched Aizawa fight with admiration, feeling honored to witness such skill firsthand. However, he noticed Aizawa was becoming increasingly exhausted. Suddenly, a villain with pale blue hair rushed toward Aizawa. Aizawa prepared himself, grabbing his scarf to engage the enemy. The villain caught Aizawa's scarf, but Aizawa retaliated with a punch. 𝐼/N felt a surge of hope, but that quickly turned to dread as she saw Aizawa's quirk falter. As Aizawa struggled, 𝐼/N felt a frantic urge to help him, but Izuku held her back, warning her that she could get hurt and that her vision might come true. He insisted she stay hidden, even though he too wanted to assist Aizawa. 𝐼/N watched helplessly as Aizawa fought valiantly, but the situation was dire. Aizawa was surrounded, and the villain taunted him, pointing out that his quirk was not suited for prolonged battles against multiple opponents. The tension mounted as Aizawa continued to fight, struggling to keep his breath steady. 𝐼/N felt a deep frustration at being forced to remain hidden while Aizawa fought bravely against overwhelming odds. A sudden flash filled my mind, revealing Aizawa in a dire state, bloodied and lifeless. Was this another vision? The villain chuckled, claiming he was not the final boss. My gaze shifted to Aizawa, and I noticed a grotesque, giant bird-like creature looming behind him. Aizawa turned to face it, and that's when the worst unfolded. The creature lunged at him, its claws raking across his face, causing his goggles to fall away. It continued to strike him relentlessly, leaving him battered and bruised, before slamming him face-first into the ground. As this horror unfolded, we remained hidden, hands clamped over our mouths, too terrified to move or intervene. Tears streamed down my face as I quietly admitted to myself that I had foreseen this moment. Izuku glanced at me, his eyes wide with fear. I revealed my vision of Aizawa, bloodied and lifeless, and my body shook with dread. Izuku pulled me close, shielding my view from the gruesome scene, whispering reassurances that Aizawa was still alive. This was it, the evil that heroes faced had revealed itself, and we were witnessing it for the first time. The villain with pale blue hair introduced the creature as Nomu, the antithesis of the symbol of peace. Nomu screeched loudly, and Aizawa cried out in pain as it broke his arm. Tsu whispered that Aizawa was still alive, which meant we had a chance to save him before my vision became reality. I looked at Izuku, who seemed torn about whether to reveal ourselves to the villains. Aizawa screamed again, struggling to erase Nomu's quirk, but it was clear that Nomu was incredibly strong, possibly even beyond human limits. I realized that Nomu was designed to destroy All Might, which explained why the villains had saved him for last. As Nomu lifted Aizawa's head, we could see the agony etched on his face before it slammed him down again, cracking the ground beneath him. Mineta, overwhelmed, suggested we should leave quickly. I turned to Izuku, seeking his thoughts, but he was still deep in contemplation. My attention was drawn to the shadowy figure that had appeared beside the pale-haired villain. The shadowy figure introduced himself as Tamura Shigaraki, and the pale-haired villain was Kurojiiri. Kurojiiri reported that the rescue hero was incapacitated, but some students had escaped. My heart raced at the thought of help arriving from you, but fear gripped me at the prospect of All Might coming, knowing my visions could come true. Tamura's expression shifted to annoyance as he declared they were leaving us confused. Mineta questioned if my visions had been false or if we had altered their course by doing nothing. I shrugged, uncertain of what had just transpired. Mineta suggested that if we had prevented my vision, it was a good thing, and we could help Aizawa escape while waiting for reinforcements. Everyone nodded, but I remained skeptical, unsure if the battle was truly over. I voiced my unease, sensing that this was far from finished. The atmosphere shifted, and the villains stood eerily still. Tamura broke the silence, declaring they needed to ensure the symbol of peace was shattered, locking eyes with Izuku and me. We had been spotted. He charged at us, his intent clear. Time seemed to slow as Tamura reached for Tsu's face, and I felt helpless. Just then, Aizawa managed to negate Tamura's quirk, giving us a chance. As Nomu slammed Aizawa down again, I inhaled sharply, and I saw Izuku preparing to unleash one for all. We shouted in unison, unleashing our quirks, creating a powerful gust of wind and smoke that sent debris flying. When the smoke cleared, I noticed Izuku's hand was uninjured, which puzzled me. To our shock, it was Nomu that had taken the brunt of our attack. Tamura, unimpressed, acknowledged our strength but dismissed us, stating he was done with us. I felt a surge of fear as Nomu prepared to grab me, but Izuku pushed me out of the way. In that moment, everything slowed again as Tsu reached for Izuku, but Tamura threatened to shatter both Mineta and Tsu. Just then, the door exploded open, capturing everyone's attention. All Might had arrived. With a booming voice, he declared, "Have no fear, students. I'm here." Tears welled in my eyes as relief washed over me. Once again, we were saved. "We were saved," Mineta exclaimed, tears streaming down his face. Tsu quickly used her tongue to pull Izuku away from Nomu. Izuku, his voice trembling, acknowledged All Might's arrival. Tsu set him down beside her, and while it was a relief to see All Might, the danger he faced was palpable. The visions that haunted Izuku now felt like they could become reality. Tamura laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines, declaring that they weren't going home after all. It felt like a nightmare. Your perspective shifted as All Might stood before them, his expression serious rather than his usual cheerful demeanor. Toruma mocked him, and Izuku felt a surge of urgency to warn All Might about the villain's plans. However, he struggled with his speed quirk and the mind link he had yet to. The villains discussed All Might's size and their plans to defeat him until he leaped into the fray. He struck the villains with precision, not giving them a moment to react. Izuku admired All Might's strength and wished to learn from him. After dispatching several foes, All Might rushed to Aizawa, lifting him with care. He murmured apologies, and a fleeting thought crossed Izuku's mind about their bond, even if it seemed unlikely. In an instant, All Might was before them, gathering the group and whisking them away from Tamura and Nomu. Izuku noticed Tamura's hand had fallen away, revealing a face marked by age and lifeless red eyes. Mineta expressed his surprise at Tamura's appearance as All Might instructed everyone to return to the entrance, urging them to take Aizawa with them. Tsu and Mineta complied, but Izuku and another friend hesitated. Izuku warned All Might about the formidable villain, recalling his previous encounter where he had struck but failed to phase him. All Might reassured him, signaling confidence, which somewhat eased Izuku's worries, though not those of his friend. Determined to assist, she insisted on staying, but All Might firmly told her to help Izuku instead. He emphasized that she wasn't ready to face such threats. Reluctantly, she turned and joined Izuku, but her resolve to help All Might remained strong. Once she was out of sight, she turned invisible and stealthily returned to the battlefield. All Might stood ready, the fight yet to begin. She concealed herself behind a bush, deactivating her quirk momentarily. 𝐾𝐮𝐬 smash. All Might shouted, aiming for Tamura, but Nomu intervened without flinching. The impact merely stirred the water around them. Nomu attempted to strike, but All Might evaded the attack. All Might acknowledged Izuku's warning about Nomu's resilience as he landed a punch to its stomach, but it had little effect. He followed up with 2 more strikes to Nomu's face, which also proved ineffective. Nomu screeched, preparing to retaliate, but All Might deftly dodged. "Doesn't even matter where I punch you, does it?" he remarked, standing his ground. He unleashed a series of punches, but Nomu barely staggered. Tamura's taunt sparked a realization in All Might. He dashed behind Nomu, seizing him and slamming him down, sending smoke billowing into the air. When the smoke cleared, she gasped. Kurogiri had opened a portal, allowing Nomu to grab All Might, who was now caught in a precarious position. Blood trickled from All Might's mouth, and panic surged within her. He was running out of time. What could she do? Everything around her came to a standstill, as if she had frozen time itself. Tears streamed down her face as she took in the sight of her friends and loved ones lying motionless on the ground. The man who had been like a father to her, the love of her life, her best friend, everyone was gone. She whispered an apology, raising her hand, which began to glow with vibrant colors. Gradually, time resumed, and she unfroze everyone, her eyes still glowing and her hair still white as she stood behind them once more. She watched as 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 charged at 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, but before the villain could strike, she quickly pushed 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 out of harm's way, taking the hit herself and crashing hard against a wall. A gust of wind pushed everyone back as smoke began to rise, then slowly clear. Midoriya groaned as he got up from the ground, his eyes darting to where 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 had been. He saw 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 looming over 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, who was now beside him. Midoriya was astonished, realizing 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 had dodged the attack. 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, wide-eyed in shock, snapped back at Midoriya, denying any credit for his escape. Midoriya's concern grew as he asked if All Might had saved 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, to which Todoroki pointed out that All Might was right there. All Might, looking pale, remarked on the incredible speed he had just witnessed. The group turned their attention to the wall where the smoke was dissipating. As the smoke cleared, they saw a girl with glowing white eyes and white hair standing defiantly. Midoriya recognized her as 𝐼/N and recalled her visions. He wondered if they were truly coming to pass. Tamaru, the villain, growled, acknowledging her as the one who had received the red substance from the scientist, implying a connection to his League of Villains. Midoriya's heart raced as he saw BLD trickling from 𝐼/N's mouth. He started to rush toward her, but All Might stopped him, warning him not to intervene. 𝐼/N glared at Tamaru and the other villains, determined to confront them. All Might decided to stay and fight alongside her, urging the others to retreat, though they were reluctant to leave. Tamaru commanded 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 and 𝗂𝐻𝐳 to eliminate All Might and capture 𝐼/N, while he would deal with the students. As he charged forward, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 lunged at All Might. Suddenly, 𝐼/N vanished from her spot and reappeared in front of Midoriya, radiating immense power. In a simultaneous clash, she and All Might struck their opponents, sending Tamaru flying, though he landed unscathed. Tamaru expressed his frustration at being thwarted, as the wind whipped around them. 𝐼/N appeared before All Might, engaging 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 in a fierce exchange of blows. Despite the intensity of their fight, neither seemed to falter. The wind intensified, creating a barrier that kept everyone at bay. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 landed a heavy punch on 𝐼/N, causing her to cough, but she quickly retaliated with a devastating counterattack, pushing him back with explosive force. She shouted in anger, her punches landing with precision and power, each one targeted and deliberate. All Might watched in awe, realizing she was more than capable of holding her own against villains. As the fight escalated, 𝐼/N teleported again, catching 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬 off guard. She seized him by the arm and propelled him upward before slamming him down with tremendous force, causing the ground to tremble. With a fierce declaration, she prepared to unleash her full power, her fist igniting with energy. She shouted her battle cry as she struck 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬, sending him hurtling out of the dome, causing explosions and chaos around them. Ichiro and Todoroki marveled at her strength, while 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 contemplated the implications of such power. Yet, two villains remained, and the battle was far from over. 𝐼/N glared at Tamaru and 𝗂𝐻𝐳, BLD trickling down her face, flames igniting around her fist. Tamaru seethed with anger, claiming that the power she wielded was meant for him. She issued a warning, giving them 20 seconds to flee or face the consequences. Tamaru smirked, confident that they would not retreat, but then the unconscious villains began to stir. Panic swept through the group as All Might realized he was nearing his limit. But 𝐼/N reassured them with a smile, declaring her intention to create clones. Suddenly, hundreds of her duplicates appeared, ready to engage the villains. With a command to scatter, the clones teleported in front of each villain, ready to fight. 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, Ichiro, and Todoroki joined the fray, while Midoriya remained, watching 𝐼/N with admiration as she led the charge against their foes. Tamaru charged towards 𝐼/N with 𝗂𝐻𝐳 by his side, shouting about revenge for what had happened to 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐬. The situation looked dire, and it seemed like she was in grave danger. In a moment of desperation, I activated my quirk and leaped toward her, feeling the strain on my legs as I pushed myself to use 5% of One for All. I prepared to strike 𝗂𝐻𝐳, hoping to disable him and lessen the threat to 𝐼/N. I shouted fiercely, warning him to stay away from her. Just then, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬 hand shot out toward my face, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. As I braced for impact, a bullet struck 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬's hand, causing him to recoil. I landed and looked up, relief flooding through me as I saw backup had arrived, along with Iida. The feeling of joy was overwhelming. I watched as 𝐼𝐼𝐻 clones vanished, leaving the villains in shock as they faced the real heroes. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐬 staggered back, taking hits, but 𝐾𝐮𝐬 quickly shielded him and warped them away, signaling their surrender. We had won, thanks to 𝐼𝐻 incredible powers and Iida's timely arrival. Looking at 𝐼𝐻, I noticed tears streaming down her face as she expressed her happiness. Her hair returned to its original color, and she began to fall back, but All Might caught her just in time. Tears welled in my eyes as I observed All Might, feeling a deep sense of shame for not being able to assist him. I apologized for my perceived failure, but he reassured me that I had bought him crucial seconds and helped keep 𝐼𝐻 safe, something even he couldn't do. His words touched me deeply, and I struggled to contain my emotions. I thanked All Might, overwhelmed with relief that he and 𝐼𝐻 were safe. Just then, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 approached, and I panicked, worried he would see All Might in his weakened state. I called out to 𝐼𝐻𝐬, but before I could explain, a wall appeared, courtesy of a pro hero. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me as I glanced at All Might, who seemed relieved as well. All Might looked down at 𝐼𝐻, who lay unconscious on his lap. I crawled closer and gently brushed her hair away from her face, wondering if she would remember this ordeal. All Might suggested it was possible, easing my worries slightly. He expressed his gratitude to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐺, the pro hero who had helped him, and they shared a light moment. I suggested reviewing the security footage from the dome to showcase 𝐼𝐻's bravery, and All Might agreed to follow up on it. Time passed, and I found myself in a hospital bed near the window. All Might was in the bed next to mine, and 𝐼𝐻 lay in front of me. Recovery Girl assured us that she would be fine, though she might be in a coma for about a week due to BLD loss. All Might was awake and recovering, while I had only sustained broken legs and a finger. It was clear that 𝐼𝐻 had endured the most. Recovery Girl mentioned that she wouldn't scold me for being back in the hospital, but she would have a word with 𝐼𝐻 about pushing her limits. All Might admitted that he had also overexerted himself during the fight, which shocked me. He hoped to maintain his strong form for at least an hour. I felt guilty for not being able to do more to help. My thoughts were interrupted when a man in a cream-colored jacket and fedora entered the room. He greeted All Might, who was surprised to see him. Concerned, I asked if it was all right for him to visit All Might in his current state. All Might assured me that the man was trustworthy and introduced him as Naomasa Tsukachi, his best friend from the police force. I felt a sense of relief. Tsukachi quickly got to the point, asking for information. Before that, All Might inquired about the safety of the other students and teachers. Tsukachi informed us that aside from me and 𝐼𝐻, only a few students had minor injuries, and both Eraserhead and 13 were in stable condition. We all sighed in relief at the good news. Tsukachi emphasized that if we hadn't risked our lives, the other students might not have survived. All Might reminded him that the students had fought bravely as well, especially the young lady lying before us, 𝐼𝐻. She looked appealing as the sunset light hit her face and the breeze gently blew her hair. The thought of getting up from the bed to kiss her crossed my mind, but I shook it away. All Might's presence brought me back to reality. He mentioned how before she fainted, she had said she was happy, and I smiled at that memory. All Might acknowledged my feelings, while Tsukachi appeared confused, prompting All Might to assure him that he would explain later. All Might reflected on the unusual experience of first-year students facing real danger so early in their training. He noted that not only had they survived, but they had also learned what it meant to be a pro. He emphasized that the villains had made a mistake by attacking them, as this class was filled with strength and courage. He believed they would become great heroes, and I was determined to work harder than ever to rise to the top alongside 𝐼𝐻. It was our promise. I glanced at All Might, who smiled and gave me a thumbs up. I nodded in response and looked outside. Little did we know, the League of Villains lurking in the USJ was just the beginning. A greater incident loomed on the horizon. For now, we were grateful to be alive and to have shown our potential as heroes, but the worst was yet to come. I woke up to a soft breeze on my face and sunlight streaming in. As I looked around, I realized I was in the nurse's office. Confusion washed over me until memories flooded back, heavy and overwhelming. I recalled watching All Might fall, witnessing my friends in peril, and the most painful memory of all, seeing my best friend and first love in danger. I whispered in despair as tears streamed down my face. Just as I was about to rise, a flashback hit me. I had reversed time, saved everyone, and no one had died. I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness before fainting into a deep slumber. When the flashback ended, I stared blankly at the white wall. The realization struck me. They were alive. Just then, a familiar voice called from the door, and I couldn't believe I was hearing it again. I looked up slowly, a small smile forming on my lips as I saw Izuku. Tears filled his eyes as he rushed to me, enveloping me in a warm hug. He expressed his fear of losing me, and in that moment, I felt the love radiating from him. I never wanted to let him go. After pulling away, he rested his forehead against mine, holding my hand. All Might's voice broke through my thoughts, and I turned to see him in the doorway. I asked if he was okay, recalling his injuries from the battle. He reassured me that he was fine and that the teachers and students were safe as well. He took a seat near my bed while Izuku remained by my side, still holding my hand. I was relieved to hear that I had only been unconscious for 2 days. As I processed this, All Might reminded me that what mattered most was that I had saved many lives and was now okay. I leaned my head on Izuku's shoulder, feeling comforted. All Might then mentioned that we needed to discuss some important matters. He explained that villains around the world were aware of me, and we needed to ramp up training, especially with the sports festival approaching. While the mention of villains made me anxious, the thought of the sports festival excited me. All Might informed me that I could return to school the next day and suggested I change before heading home. I nodded, and as I stood, I took a moment to regain my balance. Izuku offered his hand to guide me to the bathroom, and I thanked him before closing the door. After changing into leggings and my 𝐼/𝐶 hoodie, I slipped on my black Vans and tied my hair into a messy bun. Once I emerged, Izuku decided to take me to McDonald's since I was hungry and my parents were out. After our meal, Izuku stayed at my place, and we watched a movie together until he had to leave. The next day, I got ready for school, walking hand in hand with Izuku. It felt like a normal day, except during break, we announced our relationship to everyone. Most were happy for us, though Bakugo seemed perplexed by my choice. I playfully smacked him on the head, causing everyone to laugh. Throughout the day, my classmates checked on me and complimented my bravery during the battle. They even showed me footage from the cameras inside the dome, and I was amazed by my actions, though it didn't capture the moment I reversed time. Today felt like a typical day, but I wondered what tomorrow would bring. All that needed to be known was that this was another filler chapter, but it promised to be a fun and lengthy one. It was also the final chapter, as a second book was in the works. The special chapter took place after the sports festival, and the excitement in the air was palpable. Questions had been raised about the reader's quirk, and clarifications were necessary. The quirk allowed the use of 2 to 3 abilities simultaneously, depending on their power. For instance, One for All was so potent that it could only be used alone, as exceeding limits could lead to dire consequences. Inside each person was a power ball, a glowing representation of their soul, with colors indicating strength. Most individuals with quirks possessed one, while those without had a standard blue soul. The size of the power ball varied, with some being large and golden, like All Might's. The reader's power ball was enormous and rainbow-colored, which posed a risk if limits were surpassed. Training was a part of the reader's journey, though it wasn't explicitly shown in the chapters. The characters were encouraged to ask questions if they remained confused. As the story unfolded, the reader walked to school alongside Izuku and Uraraka, buzzing with anticipation for the special activity Mr. Izuku had hinted at. Once in class, Izuku entered and announced that they would be playing dodgeball, but with a superhero twist. The students were intrigued, especially when they learned that their quirks could be used during the game. After changing into their PE uniforms, the girls made their way to the gym, where they found the boys already gathered. Aizawa explained the rules, emphasizing that the dodgeballs were made of a special material that would withstand quirks without breaking. The students nodded in understanding, eager to participate. Aizawa then announced that one student would need to sit out, and before the reader could volunteer, Izuku stepped forward. With that, the teams were set, and the excitement for the upcoming game filled the gym. Costume 2 for shoes, it's the same as the one on the top but with green on the heel instead of pink. Costume 3, Costume 4 or Costume 5. Costume 6, Nomu pressed hard against All Might's sides, causing significant injury. A sense of dread washed over me as I whispered in disbelief. Nomu dug deeper, targeting the wound, and I felt a surge of desperation as I raised my voice, but it went unheard. Tamura laughed, praising 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 for their success. I watched helplessly as All Might struggled to free himself from Nomu's grip, blood flowing from his wounds. I needed to act, but my body felt paralyzed, and my vision seemed to blur with reality. Suddenly, All Might was being pulled into the warp, but then he stopped. Izuku dashed past me, ready to attack. I called out to him, urging him to stop, but he was determined. Just as he was about to be caught by 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸, Bakugo intervened, using an explosion to save him. Todoroki joined the fray, freezing Nomu and giving All Might a chance to escape, though he was clearly in pain. I felt tears welling in my eyes as I watched, overwhelmed by the chaos. Izuku stood protectively in front of me, urging me to stay back, but I was too shocked to respond. I had feared for All Might's life, and now I was witnessing the battle unfold. In my vision, I had seen other bodies lying lifeless, and the thought haunted me. Tamura called for Nomu, who emerged from the warp, shattering the ice around him. The sight of his limbs tearing away was shocking, but they quickly regenerated, leaving me feeling uneasy. All Might shouted for everyone to stay back, warning us about Nomu's super regeneration. Tamura's laughter grated on my nerves as he explained Nomu's modifications, making it clear that he was designed to withstand All Might's full power. My heart sank at the realization. As everyone took their fighting stances, I tried to join them, but my body remained frozen. Frustration coursed through me as I questioned what was wrong with me. Tamura commanded Nomu to attack, and chaos erupted. In an instant, Nomu struck, and I watched in horror as my friends fell, their bones breaking under the force of his blows. Just before Nomu reached me, All Might pushed me aside, sacrificing himself to protect me. I turned back to see Nomu seize All Might, bending him in a way that made my heart race with fear. I struggled to rise, my legs unsteady, and pleaded for him to stop as I witnessed All Might's suffering. In a devastating moment, he was overwhelmed, and I felt a scream escape my lips as darkness enveloped me. 𝐿/N's eyes glowed white as her 𝐻/L turned all white as well. Team B found itself in an unusual situation with Bakugo on the roster, but he didn't quite fit in. The teams were separated, waiting for Aizawa to signal the start of the game. Izuku stood by, observing the scene. All Might arrived in his strong form, though a cast adorned his arm, and he inquired about the activity. Aizawa explained that it was a friendly game of Quirk dodgeball, and All Might expressed his interest in watching. As Aizawa raised the whistle to his mouth, the tension in the air was palpable. The team focused intently on the opposing side, and I caught Bakugo's gaze, which sent a shiver down my spine. This was going to be more challenging than anticipated, but I recalled a power I had learned during training. I began to levitate slightly off the ground, and when Aizawa blew the whistle, I lifted my hands. To everyone's astonishment, the dodgeballs began to float. I soared higher, aligning myself with the ball, and declared, "Meteor shower." With that, I lowered my hands, sending the ball crashing down onto the other team. A shocked voice rang out, and I realized it was 𝐼𝐻𝐸, who I had managed to hit and eliminate. I watched as a ball struck 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 and 𝐾𝐿, bringing our total to 3 outs. Shoji attempted to catch a ball but let it slip, resulting in his elimination as well. Now, only Ishido, Aoyama, Ojiro, Sato, Tokoyami, and unfortunately, Bakugo remained on the opposing team. I descended and landed, receiving high fives from my teammates and a thumbs up from 𝐼𝐻𝐬, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and Izuku. The other team quickly gathered the ball, and the game resumed at a rapid pace. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 launched her ball, accompanied by some acid, which landed near my netta, causing him to falter and get hit. 𝗏𝐾𝐽 unleashed two explosive balls in quick succession, catching Kaminari and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 off guard. The remaining players threw their ball, but most missed their targets. With my team now at 7 members, I seized a ball and managed to eliminate 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was distracted. After a few intense minutes, only 𝗏𝐾𝐽 remained on the opposing team. On my side, Todoroki and I were left. Todoroki instructed me to fly and take a ball with me. I complied, levitating 3 balls as I focused on 𝗏𝐾ooloo. When Todoroki froze the floor, 𝗏𝐾ooloo retaliated with an explosive ball aimed at him but ended up getting trapped in the ice. Seeing this as my opportunity, I hurled the ball at 𝗏𝐾ooloo, hitting him twice before he broke free from the ice. Todoroki unfroze the ground, and I landed gracefully as my teammates cheered and congratulated me. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 called for Midoriya to step up next, and everyone else took a seat to watch. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 remarked that it should be interesting, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 nodded in agreement. I glanced back at Izuku, who was staring intently at me, causing a blush to creep onto my cheeks. I playfully challenged him, urging him not to go easy on me. He responded with a confident smirk, assuring me he would give it his all. When 𝐼𝐻𝐬 blew the whistle, Izuku sprang into action, grabbing 2 balls and launching them at me with impressive speed. I narrowly dodged and retaliated by throwing a ball at him using my explosion quirk, but he managed to evade it. I continued to throw ball, utilizing every quirk at my disposal, but he skillfully dodged each one. With a teasing laugh, he taunted me, but I noticed a ball behind him and had a sudden idea. I smirked, and Izuku looked confused. Focusing intently, I felt my hair lift and wind swirl around me. Upon opening my eyes, they glowed red as I lifted my hands, causing all the ball to rise off the ground. Izuku prepared to jump away, but my smirk widened as I used my quirk to negate his. With a playful shout, I declared my affection for him just before releasing my hold. The ball rained down on him, declaring me the winner. As I returned to normal, I noticed 𝐼𝐻𝐬's wide eyes, and he asked when I had learned to do that. I shrugged, walking over to Izuku, who stood beside 𝐼𝐻𝐬. I checked on him, and he nodded, giving me a congratulatory kiss before pulling away and complimenting my performance. After the game, we returned to the classroom for regular school activities and hero training before packing up to head home. It had been a fun day. Explained the rules, emphasizing that the dodgeballs were made of a special material that would withstand quirks without breaking. The students nodded in understanding, eager to participate. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 then announced that one student would need to sit out, and before the reader could volunteer, Izuku stepped forward. With that, the teams were set, and the excitement for the upcoming game filled the gym. Costume 2 for shoes, it's the same as the one on the top but with green on the heel instead of pink. Costume 3, Costume 4 or Costume 5. Costume 6, Nomu pressed hard against 𝐼𝐻𝐬's sides, causing significant injury. A sense of dread washed over me as I whispered in disbelief. Nomu dug deeper, targeting the wound, and I felt a surge of desperation as I raised my voice, but it went unheard. Tamura laughed, praising 𝐒𝐮𝐽 for their success. I watched helplessly as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 struggled to free himself from Nomu's grip, blood flowing from his wounds. I needed to act, but my body felt paralyzed, and my vision seemed to blur with reality. Suddenly, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was being pulled into the warp, but then he stopped. Izuku dashed past me, ready to attack. I called out to him, urging him to stop, but he was determined. Just as he was about to be caught by 𝐒𝐮𝐽, 𝗏𝐾ooloo intervened, using an explosion to save him. Todoroki joined the fray, freezing Nomu and giving 𝐼𝐻𝐬 a chance to escape, though he was clearly in pain. I felt tears welling in my eyes as I watched, overwhelmed by the chaos. Izuku stood protectively in front of me, urging me to stay back, but I was too shocked to respond. I had feared for 𝐼𝐻𝐬's life, and now I was witnessing the battle unfold. In my vision, I had seen other bodies lying lifeless, and the thought haunted me. Tamura called for Nomu, who emerged from the warp, shattering the ice around him. The sight of his limbs tearing away was shocking, but they quickly regenerated, leaving me feeling uneasy. All Might shouted for everyone to stay back, warning us about Nomu's super regeneration. Tamura's laughter grated on my nerves as he explained Nomu's modifications, making it clear that he was designed to withstand All Might's full power. My heart sank at the realization. As everyone took their fighting stances, I tried to join them, but my body remained frozen. Frustration coursed through me as I questioned what was wrong with me. Tamura commanded Nomu to attack, and chaos erupted. In an instant, Nomu struck, and I watched in horror as my friends fell, their bones breaking under the force of his blows. Just before Nomu reached me, All Might pushed me aside, sacrificing himself to protect me. I turned back to see Nomu seize All Might, bending him in a way that made my heart race with fear. I struggled to rise, my legs unsteady, and pleaded for him to stop as I witnessed All Might's suffering. In a devastating moment, he was overwhelmed, and I felt a scream escape my lips as darkness enveloped me. 𝐿 eyes glowed white as her 𝐿 turned all white as well. Team B found itself in an unusual situation with Bakugo on the roster, but he didn't quite fit in. The teams were separated, waiting for Izuku to signal the start of the game. Izuku stood by, observing the scene. All Might arrived in his strong form, though a cast adorned his arm, and he inquired about the activity. Izuku explained that it was a friendly game of Quirk dodgeball, and All Might expressed his interest in watching. As Izuku raised the whistle to his mouth, the tension in the air was palpable. The team focused intently on the opposing side, and I caught Bakugo's gaze, which sent a shiver down my spine. This was going to be more challenging than anticipated, but I recalled a power I had learned during training. I began to levitate slightly off the ground, and when Izuku blew the whistle, I lifted my hands. To everyone's astonishment, the dodgeballs began to float. I soared higher, aligning myself with the ball, and declared, "Meteor shower." With that, I lowered my hands, sending the ball crashing down onto the other team. A shocked voice rang out, and I realized it was 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who I had managed to hit and eliminate. I watched as a ball struck 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃 and 𝐾𝐿, bringing our total to 3 outs. Shoji attempted to catch a ball but let it slip, resulting in his elimination as well. Now, only Ishido, Aoyama, Ojiro, Sato, Tokoyami, and unfortunately, Bakugo remained on the opposing team. I descended and landed, receiving high fives from my teammates and a thumbs up from All Might, Izuku, and Izuku. The other team quickly gathered the ball, and the game resumed at a rapid pace. Ishido launched her ball, accompanied by some acid, which landed near Mineta, causing him to falter and get hit. Bakugo unleashed 2 explosive balls in quick succession, catching Kaminari and Ijiro off guard. The remaining players threw their ball, but most missed their targets. With my team now at 7 members, I seized a ball and managed to eliminate Aoyama, who was distracted. After a few intense minutes, only Bakugo remained on the opposing team. On my side, Todoroki and I were left. Todoroki instructed me to fly and take a ball with me. I complied, levitating 3 balls as I focused on Bakugo. When Todoroki froze the floor, Bakugo retaliated with an explosive ball aimed at him but ended up getting trapped in the ice. Seeing this as my opportunity, I hurled the ball at Bakugo, hitting him twice before he broke free from the ice. Todoroki unfroze the ground, and I landed gracefully as my teammates cheered and congratulated me. Izuku called for Midoriya to step up next, and everyone else took a seat to watch. All Might remarked that it should be interesting, and Izuku nodded in agreement. I glanced back at Izuku, who was staring intently at me, causing a blush to creep onto my cheeks. I playfully challenged him, urging him not to go easy on me. He responded with a confident smirk, assuring me he would give it his all. When Izuku blew the whistle, Izuku sprang into action, grabbing 2 balls and launching them at me with impressive speed. I narrowly dodged and retaliated by throwing a ball at him using my explosion quirk, but he managed to evade it. I continued to throw ball, utilizing every quirk at my disposal, but he skillfully dodged each one. With a teasing laugh, he taunted me, but I noticed a ball behind him and had a sudden idea. I smirked, and Izuku looked confused. Focusing intently, I felt my hair lift and wind swirl around me. Upon opening my eyes, they glowed red as I lifted my hands, causing all the ball to rise off the ground. Izuku prepared to jump away, but my smirk widened as I used my quirk to negate his. With a playful shout, I declared my affection for him just before releasing my hold. The ball rained down on him, declaring me the winner. As I returned to normal, I noticed Aizawa's wide eyes, and he asked when I had learned to do that. I shrugged, walking over to Izuku, who stood beside All Might. I checked on him, and he nodded, giving me a congratulatory kiss before pulling away and complimenting my performance. After the game, we returned to the classroom for regular school activities and hero training before packing up to head home. It had been a fun day.